Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special bonus episode of the Tower Babble podcast. As always, I am Julian Mush. I am joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hey there.
And here's what we're going to do today. Despite the fact that we are streaming this live, and the title for the live stream right now is Andor Season 1, Episode 5, we are going to be doing, for the sake of time, and believe me, there's just not much of it these days, it feels like. We're going to just do a quick bonus episode here. This will be posted separately to the feed, so don't worry about that messing up your Star Wars stuff. And if you are here for Star Wars stuff, please hold. We'll get to it in just a moment. But what we are going to do today is talk about the results from the summer movie wager. Now, you will recall that we recorded a bonus episode several months back before the summer in the spring, where we both, Rachel and I, walked through our picks for what we thought was going to be 1 through 10 on the domestic box office for the summer movies. So the plan here is today to just walk backwards through that same list and see how we did in terms of placement. There is a scoring methodology. I don't fully understand the scoring methodology. In my understanding, I think it's 10 points if you get the first one, the number one spot right on, and you get 10 points if you get the number 10 spot right on, and then 3 points if you nail it anywhere in between, and then 1 less point if you're 1 spot away, up to 3 spots. If any further than 3, and you get no points. You also get
something like that.
Yeah, you also get 3 black horse picks, so ones that you weren't sure where they'd line up in the actual order, but you thought, you know what, there's a chance it could crack the top 10. So you also get 3 of those picks. And again, we'll just quickly go back through our list. But before we do that, Rachel, any thoughts on just you know the score, but without revealing the scores? Any thoughts on how you did here? Any mistakes you wish you could have changed?
Oh yeah,
things you feel like you got right.
So there's things where so not that I didn't try, but I didn't do my research beforehand. So I kind of just flew, as they say, by the seat of my pants, and just looked at the names. Didn't really look into what any of the movies were, the ones that I didn't know, and just threw names down. So there's definitely one right in the middle of mine that shouldn't have been there. And then some things that I thought would do better, and definitely I should have known that America Loves Elvis, and that movie was going to do better.
Let me look. I don't remember where I put my list. Yeah, okay, so I did put it on my list, Elvis.
I had it as a dark horse, but
yeah.
I should have put it higher. I always forget that how crazy people are in the States for Elvis.
Well, I feel like they were crazy for Elvis, and I didn't see Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. I actually heard it's not bad, but you're right. I think I underestimated how crazy people were, but I still feel like I had a sense that people liked Elvis.
Yeah,
because even I like the odd Elvis song.
I thought it would have been. Yeah, I don't know. Elvis is problematic. Is all I'll say.
Is it because he died of drugs on his toilet?
No, it's because a lot of...
or because he stole the music from black people?
Yes. That is why Elvis is problematic. And
that's true.
Yeah.
But the songs, but there's still some good songs in there.
Yeah,
separate the art from the artist a little bit.
Stolen.
I think is required. Are they stolen whole cloth though, or in a more of a stylistic steal?
Bit of both.
I'm sure there's, but yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess whatever. He's dead. And this isn't a movie. This isn't a music podcast. This is a movie podcast.
That's true.
Also, we have again. I did mention we are streaming this live, so we're live on Twitch and YouTube, and you can find us on those places. Usually, Tower of Babel podcast. If you search any of those 3 words in that order, you will find us on those places, because normally it's Tower Babblecast on most things, including Twitter and Facebook, which we encourage you to follow us there. But for whatever reason, I was I big-brained myself and did not capture that for YouTube, so I don't remember what it is exactly. It's like Tower of Babblecast or something stupid, where I threw in an extra word. So you can find that there. But also on Twitch, which, obviously this is not a gaming thing, and there's a lot of non-gaming stuff on Twitch. We just happen to be one of those things, even if it is, there's a lot of gaming stuff there. And speaking of Twitch, we have a listener viewer there, Mr. Mezias. I think I'm saying that right, saying hi, hello to you.
Hello.
If you're here for Star Wars, again, please hold. We'll be onto that is in a moment. We're just going to cover off on our summer movie wager. So let's get into this. How do we want to go about it? So let's do this. Let's reveal how the score broke down at least.
Yeah,
and then we can get into like
you for so long. By the way,
let me see here. There's a timeline where up until there's a timeline. You were beating me all the way up until the July 22nd. Now the dates between this are May 8th to September 11th. Those are the beginning and end dates. So you were beating me for most of the run, and then there was a distinct jump in points.
Right.
And then you actually lost a bunch. You went from 58 to 40, and I went from 47 to 57. Now, our final scoring was I ended up at 50 points. You ended up at 34. So I don't know if I would call it a trouncing necessarily, but it was it wasn't close.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Hey,
anyway, it's fine. It's fine. There's only two people.
I got
here.
more.
Someone had to lose.
I got more right on the dot than you did, though.
And I think that's actually worth something.
Perfectly. Well, I got 10 points for two things.
Yeah, Doctor Strange.
Which is where the majority of my points came from.
Doctor Strange and Jurassic World Dominion. You put Jurassic World at 3 and Doctor Strange at 2. That's actually those are very good, and it's surprising that despite that, I mean, let's put it this way: if you had nailed Top Gun Maverick at number 1, you would have beaten me by a country mile, right?
That's true.
So,
I should have known. See, everybody had Jurassic World domination first, and I was like, I think you're wrong. I don't think it's going to do as well as you all think it is.
And you were right.
Yeah.
So and you should take solace in
so I'm taking that.
in that. Yeah, you should take solace in that. Listen, I only got one thing right, and I'm not proud of this one. Minions: Rise of Gru, right on at number 4. Okay, so let's do this. Let's walk backwards through the box office totals.
Sure.
13 through 1, and we'll see kind of how this all actually kind of came together. So
yes,
at 13, Downton Abbey: A New Era. I had put that at number 10. This was a stretch for me, although it it only lost out by like 40 million. So if you consider the difference between 10 and 1 is like 620 million.
Yeah, that's fair.
The difference between 10 and 13, only 40 million. Which again, these are big numbers, but they're all relative, and relative in this case to each other. So I might as well say 701 and versus 88. It's essentially the same thing. But I overestimated how much people actually liked or would show up for a Downton Abbey movie. You put it at number 9.
I put it at 9. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you care about Downton Abbey in any way?
No, not even a little bit. But I thought other people did more. So.
Well, that makes two of us.
Yeah.
Thing is, we could have got a lot more points. We left a lot of points on the floor here on the board.
Yes, we did.
The lesson I think here is that there is really no way to know how this is all going to play out. Now, you can go onto the global leaderboards here and say, oh, well, actually, there is at least a better way to know what's going to happen, because there are people who got much, much, much higher scores than anyone else. Here's this person, Ebo, on the 2,116 players, scored 74 points.
Holy.
So, yeah. And for that purpose alone, I'm going to include them on our scoreboard so that we can compare against the absolute best people.
Fair enough.
In the entire in the entire pool of players. So let's move on. So DC League of Super Pets, that came in at number 12 at $82 million.
Yes.
We both had this as a black horse.
Right. Yeah.
pick.
No points for it though, because it didn't land in the
No
top
points because it did not land in the top 10. That's exactly right.
10.
And the reality here, from my perspective, is I am losing faith in, and very quickly, if I might add, in The Rock as someone who can drive box office value. They used to call him, I don't know if you know this, they used to
Okay.
call him box office Viagra.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. But I mean, I
Um,
think it's different when it's animated because like Moana did
mhm.
really well, didn't it? And he's in that.
Yeah, but that movie's good,
Yeah.
I hear.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, it is a good movie. So I mean, yeah, I think that's why I threw it in there. Was I was like, okay, yeah, sometimes those movies just like take off, like those animated movies just do really well.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely thought it was going to possibly do a little bit better, but that's about probably where it should be, though. Honestly, I'm surprised it's even in the top 13.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like these animated movies sometimes do well, hence Minions: Rise of Gru. But it
Well,
doesn't have
yeah,
like the same like franchise appeal.
that's different
Yeah.
though,
Yeah. Why?
because the Minions movie turned into like a meme at some point this summer, where like college age kids were dressing up as minions and Gru and going in like droves to the theaters to
Oh
watch it
yeah,
as
that's
like a
true.
joke.
Yeah, and
So
what did you? And by the way, what do you think about that?
I think that definitely is why it's as high as it is. I don't think that movie would have been that high.
Yeah, but those are so. I think those are kids. I think we got to let's unpack this a second. Those are kids who, when they were growing up, those Minions movies were like their Disney movies, right?
Yeah.
There was
Oh
like
yeah.
that's what they grew up with. So sure, they were showing up to theaters dressed in suits for. I think they had a name. It was a TikTok thing, right?
It was a
Um,
TikTok thing, yeah.
and I don't understand the TikTok things. Not to sound like an old man. I know that's like
You're
cliche.
old,
Oh, I don't
yeah.
understand the TikToks, and the Facebooks and the Twitters. I actually do understand most of those things. TikTok is just like the one, like the bridge too far for me. But
It's like Vine, but longer. If you were ever on Vine,
yeah,
I don't know if you
I
were or not.
remember Vine, and I thought Vine was dumb back then too. So
Okay, so yeah, you wouldn't really get TikTok. It's quite
yeah,
similar.
yeah,
But
um,
it's just it's much longer now, but yeah.
yeah. So I agree that was a factor, but I don't think it was like. I think it maybe it moved it from 5 to 4. We'll put it that way. From like because it's like
Yeah.
the difference between 4 and 5 is 20
Yeah.
million,
I
right?
did have that
So
one on my board. I had it at 7. So I did get 3 points for that.
right, right, nice, nice.
But yeah, that's just kind of the funny thing where it's like you never really know what movies are going to take off and for what stupid reason they take off. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, and also the Minions movies have performed well in the past. So
yes, yeah.
okay, moving on. Actually, one more thing on this whole TikTok thing.
Sure.
Uh, I I'm not against the whole premise of like showing up to a movie dressed up. I think that's fun and cool. As long as and this is maybe again me being an old, but like as long as it's in good faith, like are
Yeah,
we
yeah.
showing up in this movie in a suit because we want to like make fun of it because like the whole this is which all makes me funny, which is like the whole Morbin time thing with the Morbius movie where it's like no, you don't understand. We actually hate that movie and you thought we liked it, so you re-released it in theaters, and that's embarrassing for you. So, talking to Sony, but like
Right, yes.
this was like it still performed well. It's primarily a kids movie, so it was primarily money made from parents
Yes.
taking their kids, and not from teenagers dressing up in suits, right? But you
True.
know, I don't know. I just don't know how much of that was in good faith or was kind of just them, fucking around.
It's
But
just a goofy thing to do. I don't know.
yeah, and
Yeah.
teenagers. I've said this many times, and no insult intended here, but they are the stupidest people on earth. It's not their fault.
I
They just
was one once
it's
and
the
yeah, I
perfect
was real dumb.
it's the perfect combination of autonomy, worldly knowledge to think that you know enough, but not know really anything at all, so that you make the stupidest decisions. Maybe also there's a bunch of like hormones raging, so it's like you're just being influenced. It's really not your fault as a teenager. So, But
Your brain isn't
ultimately,
developed fully.
yeah, that your brain isn't developed fully. So ultimately, it ends up being you have no idea what you're doing and you make the dumbest decisions possible. I
Yeah.
honestly think that like young children, like 4 or 5 year old kids, are smarter than most teenagers in like from a practical worldly standpoint. Just
They
you know,
have more fear of consequences when you're younger.
right?
You have
Yeah, that's
less
true.
at that age. But yeah, that's just my point where it's like um I think the value of like memes and things going viral definitely push people to do just dumb things like go to these movies and
Right.
be a goof about it.
And do
So
you feel lucky that that was less of a thing when you were growing up?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. I'm so happy that like Facebook didn't exist until I was like 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, it wasn't that big yet. Like we had MySpace, but that's like not even on the internet
Yeah.
anymore. So I'm happy about that. So
Right.
I
Right.
don't
Right.
want to go back and see what my old MySpace would have looked like because it would have been
You don't want to
so
know who's in your
cringy.
top 10?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Rank my friends. Um,
Right.
but still, I didn't like upload a lot of photos or anything to MySpace because I don't think you could really upload that many photos to
Oh, it would
MySpace
just
at the
take
time.
forever, like you would.
Yeah. So I'm like glad there isn't like a documented history of me being like the most awkward preteen person on the internet. Ugh.
It all just it's okay. I remember.
Yeah. I have real photo evidence of it and I
Yeah,
don't need to see it again. So
right. Okay, so moving on. We got Where the Crawdads Sing at number 11, which is a movie I know
yeah.
almost nothing about, came in at 85 million. Only 3
I
million
thought this
short
was
of
gonna do
number
better.
10. Yeah, you put it at
Yeah.
number 8, I think.
8. Yeah. I just
Yeah.
because I knew it was a book. So I was like, oh, it's a book. Like I think a lot of times I have more
Right.
faith in like movie adaptations of like because this is a relatively like a very popular book as
Is
well.
this not the book where with the lady who got arrested for murdering her husband? Is that not the same? Is this the
I
one?
don't remember. I haven't read it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, but I just know it is a popular book, so
No, no, I
I
mean like in real
assumed.
life. I feel like I remember hearing about there being a book about a woman who wrote a book on how to kill her husband, and then also got arrested for killing her husband. I don't know if that's
Oh, I don't
related to
know.
this or if that's something else. I could be
Yeah,
conflating two things,
yeah,
but
it's
yeah, it's like a
yeah,
murder mystery thing, though, right?
it's a murder mystery. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, it didn't really perform, so that's unfortunate for them. Um, I didn't have it on my list at all. All right, number 10, the real juicy stuff. Number 10, Bullet Train, and that came in at 88 million. And I put it at
Yes.
number 5, so I gave it a little bit too much respect.
Right.
But I did put it on my list. Sorry, I did put it on number 5. What did I put it at? That's a lie. I put it at. I got 5 points for it. I put it at number 8.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and you know what? All things considered, I'll take an easy 5 points on that. Obviously. Uh, 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 by the way, also it's 13 points if you nail 1 and 10, not 10 points.
That's what it is. Yeah, it's 10
Um,
points if you get it right on any
yes,
of the other ones. Yeah.
yes. So I'm looking at Ebo's list. He got number 1 and 10 right. Bullet Train at 10, Maverick at 1,
Smart.
right? But really
Yeah.
only nailed. So this is the difference between first and last. Really, he
Right.
nailed 4 things. First and last would being obviously the 1 and 10 being the most valuable, but outside of that, he got the top 3 right and
Yeah.
number 5 right.
Number
But like,
10. Okay.
yeah, so even the best of the best.
Didn't think Minions was going to do that well.
Well, exactly, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Also, my brain is clicking on what you're referring to with Where the Crawdads thing. I'm thinking, is that the movie Basic Instinct? With the girl who writes the
Uh,
book and she's like, oh, why would I write a book about how to kill someone? How to kill,
you,
that would be the stupidest alibi ever. I don't know. Isn't that Basic Instinct? Isn't that the
I.
whole premise
That
of Basic
sounds right
Instinct?
to me. I've never seen Basic Instinct, but what I'm thinking of is a real life story, and it's making me
Mm.
wonder if that person ever watched that movie because they would have probably come to the same conclusion. You can't just write a book about how to kill your husband as an alibi for killing your husband. Why would I ever do that? It's like
Yeah,
it's like
that's what
reverse
it is.
psychology that doesn't. It's not doing what you think it's doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's similar. It's like she's a crime novelist and she becomes a suspect when she's linked to the death of a rock star because her previous book or something details the
Right.
death basically to a T. And the people are like, oh, but like someone could have got the book and done the murder. You know what I mean? Like it could be either or,
Oh,
right?
so she wrote the book first
The book came out
and
first.
then
Yes.
murder. Okay, so I
Yes.
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Copycat
But
killer or something
that
like
is the
that.
premise of Basic Instinct. And yeah, there's a bunch
Classic
of other
movie,
stuff too.
which I think
Yes.
maybe shout out to the old list
Yeah.
for the
I did
movie
watch it
club.
recently, but not recently enough that it would bug me to watch it again. So
Right. Okay. There is that. There we talked about that. There is that that
yeah.
special unfortunate. It's not a sweet spot because it's annoying.
It's the
That
opposite. Yeah.
yeah, whatever the opposite of the sour spot doesn't really work. Okay. So number 9, the Black Phone. By the way,
Yeah.
before we move on, Bullet Train movie I quite enjoyed actually. I really
I didn't
liked
see
it.
that's the one that has like the crazy cast, right? Like
Yeah, it's Brad
everybody's in it.
Pitt
Yeah.
and comes to mind first. Obviously, there's a Bad Bunny's in it, who everyone knows, of course. I don't know why people are freaking out about this guy. He wasn't that great in this movie, but Sony
Mm.
loved him so much that they're giving him his own movie, basically.
Oh, okay.
Not the
Yeah.
character, but like the actor. They love him so much they want him to be in more stuff. Whatever.
Huh. Yeah, I
Um,
had this one as a dark horse, Bullet Train.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so you got a point for it.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Should have swapped that with where I had where the crawdads sing. Would have
Yeah,
got a little bit more points.
yeah. Okay, so moving on to the Black Phone. This is a
Yeah.
horror movie that did surprisingly. I think I had a horror movie in my top 10, but I don't. Let me see here.
I don't think either of
No,
us had
I
this one in
didn't.
ours. Yeah.
I
No.
didn't. I don't know how to. Here's the problem. I put my horror movies in my dark horses, which I, of course, got no points for.
Mm.
But because I put Men, Fear, and League of Super Pets. But
right.
I don't know how to judge how well a horror movie is going to do because I don't
It's
watch
hard.
horror movies.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know
it's
which
really
ones
hard.
break out. Like, you see these ones that are like, oh, this is the best horror movie in forever. But I'm like, really? Like, it doesn't seem that different from, like, a horror movie from not that long ago or whatever. So, like,
Right.
this new Smile movie, everyone's saying, oh, this is a good one. You know, you're going to want to see that one. And it's like, well, I watched the trailer for it, and it was a terrifying trailer. I will admit to that.
Oh,
It made
yeah.
me immediately decide I never want to see that movie.
Yeah, there's
I think it's
another.
Smile More.
Is that the M Night Shyamalan movie, or is this a different one I'm thinking of?
You're thinking Old? Are you thinking of Old? That's the
I
latest
don't.
M Night Shyamalan movie.
Yeah, there's a new one coming out about like the girl and her dad's in the cabin, and
Uh,
Batista's in it. It looks fucking terrifying. It looks like The Strangers meets like I don't know something else culty.
no, this one's called the one I'm thinking of is Smile, and it's coming out like
Oh, okay,
this week, I think, and
gotcha.
it's a horror
Yeah.
film it's called After Witnessing a Bizarre Traumatic Incident Involving a Patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts
Ugh,
experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. As an overwhelming terror
no,
begins taking over her life, Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. I don't know. It's
I'm
like a
good.
cursed, and there's lots of creepy smiling. It does not
Yeah.
does
See,
not appeal
I
to me.
like I like psychological thrillers. I don't
Not
like
horror.
psychological horrors.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I can't.
Hmm.
The last horror movie I think I saw in theaters was The Strangers, and it scared me so bad. Like I still like that's probably one of the scariest movies I've ever seen in my life to me.
I
And yeah, I can't see scary movies in theaters anymore because I literally felt like I was going to have a panic attack during that movie because it was so scary and it just
I
didn't stop.
understand exactly how you feel. Well, I was
Ugh.
so I went. There was another. I went to see Avatar last night, the re-release of
Right,
the
yes.
2009 film or whatever 2007, 2009 I think, but 2012. I don't remember what year that movie came out. The point is, they were playing horror movie trailers before that movie, and I don't know why. But here's what's even crazier about this whole story. This is a little side tangent. Avatar rated PG somehow. There are some brutal deaths in that movie. Stabbings, crushings, people
Huh.
shot. Like there's not a lot of blood, but
Yeah, it's
lots
the
of
blood.
killing and like some pretty
Huh.
brutal deaths. PG, rated PG. Children can go see that movie, no
Interesting.
problem. So
Hmm.
anyway, just something to think about. We'll have more to say about Avatar later because we're going to talk about it before the sequel comes out. But they were playing trailers for horror movies, but in front of a PG movie, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So I mean, there's only 5 people in the theater, and none of them were children. But it's the
Well,
principle
yeah.
that matters. And yeah, speaking to what you're saying about horror movies in the theater, we went to go see, I don't remember what movie we were going to go see, but we saw the trailer for this Smile movie, and I was like, I keep like leaning over to my girlfriend, and I was like, I don't like this. I wanted to stop. I like,
Just so
I'm like
scared.
I'm like getting anxiety. Like I'm like, nope, no. Because like this is what people want. That's the feeling they want. They're like,
Right.
oh man,
Yes.
that's so
Yeah.
cool. You go in, you feel scared. I'm like, no, that does not do anything for me. It is not
Yeah.
I do not feel any sense of relief or thinking
No.
about it not being real does not help me. None of that kind
No.
of stuff does anything for me. So anyway, the Black
No.
Phone.
Yeah, I didn't even have this on my list. But again,
I
this is one that I didn't even look up. So I'm like,
Yeah, I
that to
mean,
me, the name of it just sounded dumb. So I was like, that sounds dumb. I'm not putting it on
yeah.
my
Well,
list.
I mean, do you know what the premise is? The premise is that it's like a kid is kidnapped and by a serial killer or a murderer of some kind, and inside their like prison is a phone where the kid gets to like talk to all the previous victims of this murderer.
Oh.
So
Ooh.
there's like a whole thing there. I don't really know anything else
Yeah.
about it, but it did seem to. It obviously did
Scary.
well. I mean, I get
That
like
sounds like
it
a
made it.
mix of things that I would like, but yeah,
It's
maybe a
kind of
little
like
bit
a
too
Stephen
creepy.
King esque flavor to it,
Yeah,
apparently.
which I
Yeah.
can handle those. Like they're a little bit. It's just anything that's really demony that I don't love, or anything that's
Right.
too real. And The Strangers was just too real for me, and that's why that one was so scary.
Anything that's too demony. I don't. I like
Yeah.
that. Okay, I agree. For the record. Okay, next up we've got Lightyear, and
hmm
this is a movie that ultimately underperformed. I think certainly in Disney's eyes. I
Right.
put it at number 7. It came in at number 8, so I was pretty close. I got 7 points for that, but it's a movie that I didn't see in theaters. Just to be clear, I did not contribute to the box office total here. Even though I kind of wanted to, I just never made time. I just never. It's like just like, oh,
hmm
maybe we'll see you next week, and then next thing I know, it's out of theaters. So I watched it on
Yeah.
Disney Plus, and it was an enjoyable ride. I know I probably would have liked it in theaters too, but it it was only okay, and it certainly wasn't like I didn't know what to expect, which is normally good in my opinion. Like to go in with no expectations, or better yet, low expectations, and then you can only be surprised. But
Yeah.
uh,
See, I
it
needed
just
to have this one and Minions swapped, and then I would have had 10 points.
and you would have beaten me, but
Yeah,
not
because
quite.
I had Lightyear at
Yeah.
4 and Minions at 7. So I should have swapped them,
Uh.
I
Uh huh.
guess. Yeah.
Uh
Yeah.
huh.
Well, I guess it would have been closer at least, but
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think you made a mistake there. Well, I mean, you did in reality, but in planning it,
Yeah.
I don't think so because
Yeah,
it's
I
a
thought it was
Pixar
going to be
movie. It's
better.
the first Pixar movie that they've released in theaters in many years.
Mhm.
It's targeted at young boys. It stars a famous character from one of the most beloved animated movies of all time,
Well,
in
and
Toy
that's the
Story.
thing. Like Toy Story has done so well, and I just thought it would get a lot more of like, oh, like the parents now bringing their kids to see Lightyear
I don't think
because
the
they grew up
parents
with
knew
Toy
what this
Story,
movie
but
was, and they're like,
yeah, maybe
do I want
not.
to take my kids? I don't even know what this. And in fact, it deals with some pretty heavy stuff at the end
Oh,
of this
okay.
movie, and it's some pretty like high concept ideas. Like
Hmm.
it's a kids movie, but like, and I'm sure they can get enjoyment out of it at like a base fundamental level. But there's some stuff in this movie that I think younger kids would just go right over their head.
Oh,
Um,
okay, fair enough.
that's like core to the plot. So whatever.
Yeah,
It's
fair enough
fun.
then.
I think it would have actually this is one of the rare examples where like, you actually probably were better off just putting this straight to Disney Plus. And I mean, they made $118 million, so it's not
I
like they
mean,
made
yeah,
no money at
that's
all, but like
no.
it just there is better animated movies that went straight to streaming. I'll name one specifically. Sea Beast on Netflix. That movie's freaking rocks. It's so
No.
cool.
Haven't even
Um,
heard of it.
Yeah, it's by the same people who made How to Train Your Dragon,
Oh, cute. Okay.
and it's like imagine a animated pirate movie with giant sea monsters, and one of them is like a nice
Oh,
sea monster. You know,
That sounds cute. Yeah, I'd
it's
watch that.
really it's so good. It's honestly so good. It has Carl Urban as the main character, and it's just I can't get it. It just looks great. The performances are great. It stands out in all the ways that Lightyear doesn't, and yet it
Yeah.
only went straight to Netflix. So,
Oh, okay.
okay, so that's Lightyear. Next, and you got 3 points for that pick,
I
as you
did.
think you said, yeah.
Yes.
Also, by the way, you got the same amount of points as Ebo. He'll got 3 points for that one.
Well, see, there we go. I know something.
Yeah, that's right. And next up, we have Nope. And now I get to share a little bit of stuff with Ebo. I got 7 points. He got 7 points for this. You got no points for this.
None. Yeah, I didn't
Um,
put this on my list at all.
you
Again,
got
this is one of
Nope
the ones that I
points.
didn't look at. If I had looked up what this movie was about, I would have been like, oh yeah, I would have put it on my list. Because as soon as I saw the
Mhm.
trailer and then I was looking at my list, I was like, ah shit. I was
I
like, I
feel
don't
like
have
the
that one on
best
my
way to judge this, maybe the best way to judge this is just watch the trailers for these movies and then
Yeah,
make your picks based on that. You know?
I think so. But
Um,
I feel like at the time were all the trailers even out? Yeah, they probably were.
yeah. For Nope, certainly. I think
Yeah.
there was trailers out for that one at that
This is what I
time.
mean. Next year I'm gunning for you because I'm gonna do better research. I'm gonna take the bit of time.
Hey, what did we agree, by the
You'll
way? What was
see.
this? What was the what, like the? It was beer, right? That was the
Oh
prize for
yeah.
this. Yeah. Okay. The
In
steaks.
hindsight, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Steaks.
Perfect.
It was definitely not
Yeah.
steaks. I'm pretty sure. Oh, it was beer. Yes.
Yeah.
I
Well,
thought
the
you meant like,
steaks were beer. Yeah.
yeah, which is easy for me because I
Yes.
can get it for free for my job. So,
Right. And fortunately, I don't have to pay for it. So I would have to pay for
yeah,
it, and therefore, because I won, I don't have to pay for it. So this is good.
yeah.
We you know what? We all win. Free beer all around. Okay, so Nope. I loved this movie. This is a Jordan Peele film, sci-fi thriller. Has horror. Speaking of horror movies, it has a horror element to it, and there's one specific
Right.
scene in this movie right in the middle that. Oh yeah, that was the Smile movie was the trailer for that was before Nope. And
Oh,
so
that makes sense.
we get into this movie, and then this happens, and I was freaking out. I hated it. That part specifically, it was effective,
Okay,
but I just didn't.
I
I
have
didn't
not
like it.
seen it, so
No spoilers here, but
yeah.
I will say, Nope, very fun ride. Um, if you like Signs, this movie's for you. You know,
Oh, okay. I like
it.
Signs. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
like
you'll like this
alien
movie a lot.
movies.
No, this is
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
And it's like not to spoil it again, but it's smarter than just an alien movie. There's more to it
Yeah.
than that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
Hmm.
cool. Um, so that's Nope. At 6, Elvis. We talked about Elvis a little bit already. You got a point for
Yeah.
this. I got 3 points for
As
this.
a dark horse. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Dark horse pick. I mean, what are you
Yeah,
gonna
I feel
do?
like this is one of the ones. Yeah, I feel like this is one of the ones that I was
Right.
like humming and hawing about. I was like, oh, like should it be on my main list or should I just put it as a dark horse? Like I don't really know. And I was just like, whatever. I'm leaving it on my dark horse because to be, I was like, it sounds like a dumb movie and I don't want to see it. So
Well, I mean,
I
you
used
might.
my own bias and I was like, this sounds stupid.
Yeah, you got to separate yourself from your own personal bias for these
I
sometimes.
know
I mean, to some
it's
degree,
hard.
I kind of wish I didn't because if I was being honest with myself, I would have put Top Gun Maverick at number 1 on my own list
Oh,
because
okay.
I was
Yeah.
so stoked for that movie. I was like, yeah, I can't wait. A lot of people put it lower down on their list than where I put it on mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, even then, I put it at 5, which I thought was quite generous. But obviously, I was stupid and therefore, by the way, again, correcting the result, the scoring methodology. I'm pretty sure if it appears anywhere on the list, you get 3 points. So,
Okay.
not there's. I
Maybe.
don't
Yeah.
think. Yeah. So I got 3 points for that, despite it
Yeah.
being larger than 3 spots away. But we'll talk about Top Gun Maverick in a second. But Elvis, a movie that I think seems totally fine in every. It's a musical biopic about a celebrity, a character who is larger than life. It's like a natural fit for this type of thing. I didn't expect it to do this well. Number 6 is high, in my opinion, but I did put it at number 9, which I think is kind of where it probably deserves to be. If I'm being honest, like again, my own personal bias, like it doesn't. I don't think it should be at number 6. But and I actually think
Yeah.
like we're like if we're talking about like where does this feel like this list feel right? Lightyear I think fits is in the right spot. I think Nope is in the right spot, largely speaking. Elvis too high. Is my
Right.
opinion
Yeah.
on that. Yeah,
Yeah. I had
I don't know
Watcher
why.
where Elvis is.
What even is
I don't
Watcher?
know. I don't know. I yeah. I think I
Hey,
just picked it because of the name.
if it makes you feel any better, Rachel, you were beating Ebo, um,
I
at
was
one
beating
point.
everybody for a little while at one point. I was like,
Yeah,
I'm killing this. Everybody sucks. I'm gonna win, and then I just didn't.
everybody sucks. I'm gonna win, and then yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay. Watcher was about like it's a serial killer movie. It's
Right.
like a
So you're just
serial killer in a city, and but it didn't have very many like well-known names.
the
Yeah,
old no name issue. That's a problem sometimes.
yeah, yeah. It was just kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
So whatever.
Uh, okay. Moving on, we have at number 5, Thor: Love and Thunder. A movie that I thought was going to be the number 1 movie of the
Me too.
summer.
I think. Yeah.
Maybe a little cynically in the sense that like I liked Thor Ragnarok. I think it's gonna
That's
make good money.
why. Yeah, that's why I thought it was going to do better because Ragnarok was so good and did so well that I was
I
like,
mean,
oh, okay.
340 million is nothing to
No, it's still no,
shake a
it's
stick
not.
at here. Oh.
No, it's great, but yeah,
Did you see Thor: Love and Thunder? Love and Thunder,
I
you saw
did.
that?
That's the
Yeah.
only movie out of any of these that I actually saw.
You didn't see Doctor Strange 2?
No, I
Oh
didn't.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't go. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't go to a lot of movies this summer. I was busy being outside. Okay.
Oh, that feels like unnecessary dig. It was a nice summer, but yeah, I don't know. I think Thor: Love and Thunder is like a pretty good movie. Is it a great movie? No. Um, is number 5 kind of where it probably belongs based on what the movie actually is and not kind of what I thought it was? Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's easy to be, hindsight being 2020, of course. It's easy to say that now. But yeah, the
Yes,
movie's
yeah.
just okay. I think I like it a lot. I think it's very funny. The action scenes are fun, but I think it's largely pretty forgettable. Doesn't its stakes are relatively
Yeah.
low, or at least we don't really, it's like it's fine. And
This
and
is one of
and
the
that
ones where,
yeah.
yeah, I had Thor: Love and Thunder and Top Gun switched. Like I had Top Gun is 5 and Thor:
Oh,
Love and
really?
Thunder is 1. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is another one of those ones where I'm like, damn it, if I would have just flipped those two.
Yeah,
But
I mean, sure, easy to say that if I just put Top Gun at
it
number
is.
1. I don't think anyone, not really any,
No.
like Evo obviously aside, put Top Gun at number 1.
Yeah.
But like,
Just new.
most people did not do
Yeah.
that. And and you know what? We were all stupider for having not done that because Top
Yeah.
Gun Maverick is a great movie. And again, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, moving on. Minions: The Rise of Gru. We kind of touched on this already. It
Yeah.
earned 360 million for 4th
That's
place.
wild.
Yeah,
It's
lots of
wild.
money.
I'm sorry. That's crazy.
Well,
I
I mean,
don't
it's
know, for an
it's a kids
animated.
movie. They just kind of
I
have
know.
that. They just kind of have that.
Yeah. There's always one like
thing.
every
Yeah.
year. I guess that's true. That just kind of blows
Kids,
up. But I still
parents
think
gotta
it's
take their
wild that
kids to the
it came
movies.
forth. Yeah, it's true.
Okay. The next one. I just have nothing else to say about that. We've each got 3
We
points.
kind of talked through it. Yeah.
Yeah, we each got 3 points on that. Sorry,
No,
I
you
got
10 on
10,
that one.
and you
Yeah.
got 3. Sorry, I was reading the wrong
Yeah.
item.
Yeah. If
And
it weren't for
then
that one, you totally would not have beat me. Okay. So
yeah, I guess. I mean, well, really,
actually, you had
because I
quite a few.
beat you.
You got sevens, quite a few. You got quite a few 7-pointers.
I'm like,
So
really? Because I beat you by 26 points,
yeah,
or
fair.
16 points. It's not, it's
Uh,
a one score. It's not it's an aggregate. You got to get, if you got a bunch of hits nearby, that's just as good as getting the big ones.
yeah, that's true.
Okay. That leads into the top 3. Drum roll, please. That's a drum roll. Now, I didn't want to hit anything on the desk. It just makes a bad sound.
Terrible.
So number 3, Jurassic World Dominion. I got 5 points for this. You nailed it. And number 3, we
Yeah.
got 10 points for this. This movie you didn't see. I love Jurassic Park movies. This movie's just, it's whatever. It brings back the original cast, and I was stoked for that. I was ready to, like, I put it at number 1, like, because how much money these movies typically make.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
And it made $375 million, so it's that's still pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But if you consider how much money the number one movie made versus two and three, even, I mean,
Yeah, it's
if you put the
crazy.
two and three together, they barely crack the first spot. If you just to compare
Yeah.
that, and in fact, if you put a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and 5 together, you still basically only barely get to one. So that's just to give you a
Yeah.
sense of kind of where the money's spread out here, and by or in lack thereof. Anyway,
Very
so
underestimated how much dudes love airplanes and mustaches, I guess. Should have
it's
known.
not. It's more than just mustaches and airplanes. Okay,
Does Top Gun have a beach scene? The
there.
Maverick one?
In
Like the
fact,
older one?
there is, and they play football this
Shut
time.
up. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
yeah, and they listen to. There's a really good
Uh
song that plays at that moment. I'm trying to remember the band now. It was all over the radio.
mhm.
But a One Republic song they use at that moment.
Okay.
That I think was made for, because the music video is just like that scene from the movie. So I think they wrote it for the movie. Well, again, we'll get there in a second, but a couple
Yeah.
things going for it, including its soundtrack, which is very good, including also a Lady Gaga song. So yeah, Jurassic World Dominion. I think this movie got to number 3 despite of how kind of lame it is. It's just
Right.
it's like fun at the time. You get these fun dinosaur moments. It's early part of that first half of the movie is much better than the back half, but the new cast and the old cast barely interact at all. The old cast, who are better in almost every way, barely get to do anything. There's way too much talk about locusts than there is
Hmm.
dinosaurs. Um, it's not as smart as it thinks. It's not as exciting as it thinks. It introduces a new character as if like she's been there this whole time, who's really cool, but like just feels odd to put her in when you already have these two casts of characters together. It just seems
Gotcha.
too much. I don't know. It's fine, but number 3 is still pretty good considering. So only got 5 points for that guy. Number 2, Doctor Strange 2. This movie rocks. So much fun.
Yeah, I need to
Loved
see
Doctor
it.
Strange 2. Having the first movie being very good. This movie, I think, exceeds it in almost every way. It feels much more a part of the larger MCU. Obviously, it brings in references from all over the place. It starts dealing with the multiverse stuff left over from Spider-Man, and it does so in a very exciting, visually interesting way. There's really fun cameos throughout. It's able to be shocking and surprising because it's dealing with this multiversal concept. Again, without spoiling anything, it's good. It's a good movie, and I just think that I didn't personally think it would be like this good, because like I said, the first movie was fine.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this movie's like better in every single way. And I guess I shouldn't be that shocked. Directed by Sam Raimi, who of course directed Spider-Man 2 and the original Spider-Man movie. And music by Danny Elfman, who's obviously a legend in Hollywood composing. So, it's got a lot of the right mix of stuff. Plus you've got, Elizabeth Olsen, playing essentially the villain here. You've got, I'm not going to mention the kind of the other cameos here, but, you know, Wong taking definitely a big bump from She-Hulk lately, but he's great here.
Yeah, he
Benedict
is.
Cumberbatch, doing his thing. He's like, the thing about Doctor Strange, which is kind of odd for me, is that I like the character more than I like Benedict Cumberbatch's like portrayal of the character. He feels
Really?
very,
I feel like I
yeah.
like his portrayal of him.
I don't like his American accent. I think that's the biggest
Oh,
turnoff
really?
for me. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, weird.
And then with a name like Benedict Cumberbatch, I just expect Britishness out of you, and that's how he talks normally, and that just it throws me off. I don't know. There's more to it
Oh
than that, but I
dear.
just for shorthand, that's
Yeah.
the sitch. And then moving on. Anything else you want to say about Doctor Strange 2?
Not really. Yeah.
You
But
nailed
that
this
makes
pick
sense.
though.
I was like, that's kind of where I figured it would land. I was like, yeah, I think it's anything in that MCU, like it does just well. I don't know. I just figured, and he's such a likable character, so I had a
Sure.
strong feeling that this one was going to do very well.
Yeah, and I mean, I had Jurassic World Dominion at 1 and Thor: Love and Thunder at 2 and Doctor Strange at
Right.
3. So
Right. Yeah. So you
I
had
had
them
the
just, yeah.
top 3. I just had them in the wrong order, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And it's like I think a lot of people put those 3 at the top, except for maybe you. You put
Oh, yeah.
2 of those 3 there.
No, I
Um,
had Thor, Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange, and oh yeah, I didn't have Maverick though. I didn't have Top Gun.
well, no, you
I
didn't
think
have
I had that
Maverick in
at
there.
5.
I'm just
Yeah.
seeing, looking at your list here. Oh yeah, you had them all in the same. You had the same movies there, also just in the wrong order.
Just in the
Um,
wrong order. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
To make it work. Anyway, so that leads us to number 1, and this is just a moment where we should all sit back and appreciate how good of a movie Top Gun Maverick is, because it is awesome. It is a great film. It deserves to be at number 1. $701 million in comparison to Doctor Strange 2 at
So much money.
411 is very impressive. There's really not enough words to describe how astronomically
Yeah.
well this movie did.
It's yeah.
Tom Cruise made more money on this movie than he's made on any other movie in his entire career.
Ugh, I hate him.
I don't, as I said before, and I will continue to say again, I do not like him as a person, nor do I really
Yeah.
know him as a person. But I don't like him as a Scientologist. I don't like that. He's just not. I get it, but
Yeah.
boy, are his movies entertaining. He makes very few bad movies. I used to say he makes no bad movies. That's not
Very
true.
few now.
But very, very few, like count them on one hand, amount of bad movies in his entire career. And I love this movie. I saw it twice in the theater, so I did contribute to this box office
You saw
total.
it twice? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I wanted to see it more. I just couldn't I couldn't find time. Yeah, I
Oh my
loved it. I
goodness.
think it's an absolute joy to watch start to finish. The
I feel like
themes are great. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Oh no, I was just gonna say I feel like this one just like took not that it was a phenomenon, but I just feel like it's like the perfect dude movie. Like it was
Yeah,
just
I mean,
like
I think you need more
I
than
just saw
dudes
so
to
many
crack
guys
700 million.
broing out, going to see Top Gun. Even like my good friend, one of my best friends came home over the summer with her husband and she's like, "Yep, he saw Top Gun and now he has a mustache." It was so funny. And
That's
she was just
funny.
like, "I hate it. I hate it so
She doesn't like the
much."
mustache. What's wrong with the
No.
mustache?
She's just like exasperated. She's like, "Oh yeah, he saw Top Gun and now he has a mustache." I was like, "That's really fucking funny."
Well,
So I saw a lot of mustaches this summer. I don't
more
know. I feel like
power
Top
to
Gun.
him, I say. I don't know if that's entirely a Top Gun phenomenon. It's just mustaches do seem to be making a comeback, but I don't think it's
Yeah.
entirely Top Gun's fault. Yeah, I just think like it's a simple premise. It's very clear about what the movie, what it is and what it's trying to do, and it just it executes at like precise at a precise level. Like it knows exactly
Right.
what it wants to be and does exactly that. And because of that, it makes it very enjoyable to watch. You just are having such a blast the whole time. It hits these emotional beats perfectly well. There's these like reunion moments. There's these moments where he's like reminiscing. There's like all these old connections. There's this like lineage idea. This aging concept of struggling with your place in the world. All this stuff. These kind
Right.
of core simple ideas are weaved into the story in such a way that does I don't think you're necessarily ever like confused about what's going on or questioning what's going on or asked necessarily to like think too hard necessarily what's going on. And that's not to say that this movie's dumb. What I am saying is that it's clear and it's
Gotcha. Yeah.
understandable and the action scenes are awesome. It's all filmed in these like this practical way with cameras inside fighter jets. And if you're seeing this in a movie in IMAX, it just can't be beat. In fact, I'll watch this movie at home someday, and it will not stack up. It's one of those things like Avatar, where we all went to go see that in theaters. Some people saw it multiple times because it was a ride, right? And this
Right.
is
Yes. Yes.
this is the same for me. It's a ride, and it deserves every amount of every dollar it got. I think it's so fun. It's
I'll
so much
see
fun.
it when it comes on Netflix, maybe.
Well, I don't know if Paramount Plus is where you're gonna want to find that.
Oh, well, I'm never going to see it then. We'll see.
You can always rent it.
Yeah.
People still do that.
I'll do that.
Okay, well, that's the list. Again, recap, I scored 50 points. Rachel scored 34. Next year,
Jeez.
if you feel free, you can play along with us on
Yeah, that'd be fun.
thesummermoviewager.com. And again, just giving credit where credit's due. This is not our website. We play along with another podcast, the Filmcast guys, who and their listener who put this together, this website. And so he just makes it easy to track and makes scoring that much simpler. And I don't have to do and make a spreadsheet or something.
Any work for it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a lot of fun. It adds a little bit of stakes to the summer movie season, and so I encourage you to play along with us next year, and we'll certainly be playing next year. But in the meantime, Rachel owes me a case of beer.
I do.
So I can't wait to cash in on that. Any
You're going to Australia for a little while, so
Yeah, well, it's okay. Beer will still be around when I get back. Any final thoughts on this year's game?
No, just that I'm going to do better next year, and I'm coming.
A vow,
for you,
a promise.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to come back with a vengeance next year.
Ooh, the Summer
It's gonna
Movie
be
Wager
like-
2.
I'm going to be like one of
With a
those
vengeance.
guys who does fantasy football and takes it too seriously.
Yeah, you wear one of those green visors, and you got like
Oh yeah,
you got like
all my sheets
all
and
over
my,
the place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stats. You're like,
Yeah.
it's like, well, actually, I put this here because this movie, and this is the way. By the way, some people really get into it, and you know what? More power to them. It's fun.
Yeah.
They like to compare, like, okay, well, Jurassic World Dominion made approximately this much, so the next Jurassic Park movie is going to make probably around the same or maybe more, depending on this, yada yada yada. Or
Right.
hey, movies by this director just typically do this well, and you can find all that information, by the way, at Box Office Mojo, which is where all these kind of this the actual numbers of these things are tracked from. So
Oh, okay.
there's your tip for next year.
Yeah, I'm coming. I'm gonna get it.
All right. Well, and then I guess we'll have to raise the stakes next year, but we'll
Yes.
cover that when we get to it. All right. On that note, thank you so much for playing. If you did, and we'll be back next year with another Summer Movie Wager. We'll talk to you then. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian Mush. I am joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hello.
And we are here to talk about Andor Season 1, Episode 5, The Axe Forgets. Great title.
Mm-hmm.
Love the title. Might be the best Star Wars episode title for like a show.
Sure.
It's so, I guess on its own, it's just kind of 3 words, but
Yeah.
In context with
I did like the context.
the episode itself, I just think it's so cool, and it is very thematic. And anyway, we'll get to that. But before we do, let me just remind everyone to follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to our website, towerbabble.ca, to find everything we do, including our flagship show, the Tower of Babble podcast. Rachel and I, you know this if you've been listening live, which we're on right now, Thursday nights, YouTube and Twitch. We just recorded our summer movie wager results. I won't spoil who won, but again, if you're listening live, you know already. But that'll be live in the feed next week, so that's a little preview for you folks listening to the Star Wars stuff here. But you'll find that in the Tower Babble feed, so look for that there. You can also support the show if you like us and you like what we do. It would be very helpful because, inflation, I don't understand. Things are expensive. And if you can't afford it, no pressure. We don't want you to feel pressured at all. But it helps keep the lights on. And you can head over to Patreon, patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast, BABBLE. And we do a monthly film club there. And this last month we did The Rock.
Mm-hmm. Great movie.
It really was a very fun movie. And looking forward to it quite a bit. We're doing Dawn of the Dead, right?
Oh, so scary.
Yeah, Dawn of the Dead this month for October. Obviously, because it's spooky season.
Yeah, it's spooky season. He kind of got us,
right.
so.
That's right. And we've kind of already pre-picked what our November movie is going to be, which is Avatar, a movie that is going to have its sequel 10 years later, basically, the following month. And of course, we typically try to pick a holiday movie for December. So just keep that in mind. But again, those are all exclusive. Well, it's okay. There's lots of good ones. This is exclusive to the Patreon. So if you like what we do here, you want to hear us talk about more movies, you can, I guess we haven't done shows on there. It is a movie club. But in this case, we're talking about shows, but in a very similar format. You can head over to patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into this review. I will mention, though, one, I wouldn't say it's a correction, but a little tidbit of information we got from a listener. And by the way, a perk of the Patreon is you get access to our Discord, which is a ton of fun. Rachel, you're on the Discord, I think, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Yes. I'm in there. I just lurk. I don't,
She's a lurker. We're all kind of
I should engage more. I'm sorry. I think I forget about Discord because I'm on Discord for my Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes guild, and there's a lot going on in there, so I tune it out.
Yeah,
so I'm a bad
fair.
Discorder.
Hey, Discord's, we were talking about how in the last episode, in the last show we just recorded, the summer movie wager thing, we were talking about TikTok and how I don't really get it. I didn't really understand Discord for a long time, and the thing is, it still kind of confuses me because it feels like it's just kind of like a chat app, but like a super advanced one.
Right, yeah.
But I understand that you can do audio stuff in there too, and it's for gaming and etc.
Yeah, and you can keep it like really anonymous, and then people don't have strangers don't have your phone number.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's
so
helpful.
it's like you don't have to have your your actual real name.
Wait, stranger? You have to put your phone number in TikTok? Can you not be?
Well, no,
I guess
they're two completely different things. But it's like if you're comparing WhatsApp and Discord, like WhatsApp has your phone number in it, whereas Discord doesn't. So it's a little bit more secure if you're using it for like gaming and that kind of stuff, and like interacting with people that you don't actually know in real life. You know what I mean?
Yes,
That's what I totally assume the purpose of Discord is for. And
I totally get it.
Encrypted and stuff too. Yeah,
I think so. And it's fun.
I think it's encrypted. Yeah,
it's a fun spot.
It's a fun spot. Yeah.
Um, Anywho, the point being is, let me just go to the right spot here. Our a loyal, longtime listener, friend of the show, Alex Pena, was talking about how we were talking about last week how gorgeous the landscape was on the planet that Andor's on, which
Yes.
is Adani, right? And we're like, oh, it's so great that they're filming on location. It's so refreshing and beautiful. And Alex said that they were, and Alex, you sent this in with, I think, I did not get permission to read this. I'll just be honest with you guys. I apologize, Alex, but it's just such a very cool thing. I had to share it. That it was filmed in the Scottish Highlands, and that they've actually been there
Oh.
before. And that particular mountain that they're on is famous for a power station built into the middle of it, and it's a kind of a dam that blocks off,
Oh.
it's an electric hydro powered dam, right?
Cool. Well, so
And
wait, the dam in is that real then?
yes, that's also
Huh.
a real thing. It's obviously they've added little bits of Star Warsiness
Well,
to
yes,
it.
of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
but oh,
but
that's really cool though. I didn't realize the
yeah,
dam was real. I thought that was like CGI
yeah,
or
and like if
something else.
they posted pictures of the dam in uh on the comment here, and it like just on its own it looks very Star Warsy. Like it doesn't really need much changing to be Star Warsy, but they did make some small
Right.
tweaks. But largely speaking, practical. And
Cool.
so it's called Ben Crucian. Cruash. I don't know how to say that. Cruachan. Crouchen. I don't know. And anyway, they thought it looked familiar, and then they looked it up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is definitely it." So
Oh, cool.
the it
Great
gets
info.
more interesting actually. So this is where it gets way cooler, which is that uh, the line from last week where they talked about how there used to be lots of people up there, but then they all got moved down to the factories, and now there's barely anyone up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That actually has more meaning because, and I'll just read the quote here from Alex, which is that I think you missed the deep take here. That in the Scotland, those glens were full of people until the 18th century when they were cleared out to create farmland and were sent to cities to work in factories in the early
Wow.
Industrial Revolution. So
Hmm.
an Easter egg for those who know Scottish history, which
Yeah.
of course I didn't, and I apologize.
No,
Um,
very interesting. That's super cool. Yeah, I didn't realize any of that. Man, how cool would it be to like be someone who gets to like scout locations for these like Star Wars shows and like other things within this like universe of filming. Like I bet you that's a whole
mhm.
job where someone's like they're like,
Oh
"Hey,
yeah,
this is kind
location
of what we're
scouting
looking
is
for." Like,
awesome. Yeah,
oh,
I think about it
man,
all the time. What a job,
that'd be
right?
such an awesome job, yeah. But great catch, Alex. That's awesome.
Yeah, and like here's the thing, just to what's the word I'm looking for here? Absolve myself a little bit, which is to say, if you send in something really cool to the show like that, assume it's going to be read on the show. And if you don't want it read on the show, just let me know. Then I'll definitely not do that. I don't want to break anyone's, personal embargoes and reveal any secrets here. Although this is Scottish history, so it's really no secret.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
definitely a cool Easter egg, and I think adds a
That's
little bit
very
of
cool.
texture to the show in a much more interesting way than I even already thought. Even though I thought it already had some interesting texture.
Mhm.
Okay, so next we are going to talk about episode 5. Like I said, The Axe Forgets. This is a episode directed by Susanna White. We talked about last week. Written by Dan Gilroy and Tony Gilroy. Tony Gilroy, obviously the one who's been closest to this show, but Dan Gilroy is his brother, also
I
a writer and
assumed.
director, and has a couple of their own kind of big names on their filmography. The
Okay.
writer of Nightcrawler, the writer of Kong Skull Island, Velvet Buzzsaw. Let's see here. Real Steel. That movie's very fun. The Bourne Legacy, and he's actually directed 4 movies as well, including Velvet Buzzsaw, and Nightcrawler, and Roman J. Israel Esquire. So these are some of these movies I know, some I don't. But point being, it's interesting that he got his brother involved here. He obviously has a sharp mind for writing, and it's clear that this show just makes all the other Star Wars shows look silly by comparison. When you look at it from just a pure writing standpoint, it's like night and day. It's like, and again, this is not to disparage the other shows. I really like the other Star Wars shows.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. I don't disagree with you, but I don't fully agree with you because I feel like there are other shows that have
Sure.
grasped my attention a little bit better, and like than this one has. Like,
Is it because you feel like this episode was a particularly slow one?
this one was really slow. This one I felt like didn't even need to be here. I won't lie.
So
I feel
she
like
doesn't go here. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just feel like everything that's in this episode could have either been tacked onto the one before or added to the next one. Like, I feel like this didn't need to be its own. But we'll
I
see.
think that's
I
fair.
guess.
I almost kind of feel like this show could have done something really cool by releasing episodes 3 at a time. You know,
Yeah, that's true.
and because it's 12 episode season, and the first 3 were dropped, and it was kind of like a mini movie, right? You had this kind of first act, second act, third act, kind of beginning, middle, and end kind of thing. And it's told it's kind of one contained story, although it is connected to where we are now. One contained story in 3 distinct breaks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This seems to be doing the same thing. We got the beginning, we just had the middle, which was, mostly prep for the third one.
This feels like prep for the next one, which I kind of already thought was what was happening in the last episode.
Sure,
so I'm like, okay.
Right.
But
well, they
I'm
did
not
say
mad
there were
at it,
3 days, right? So
Yes.
they did tell us,
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not mad at it, but I just, that's
Well, I think
all I'll say is like I do just think that there is other things that have held my attention a little bit better and that I've been a bit more excited about so far than Andor, but I'm liking it. It's hard because I just loved most of Mando like so much. So
sure. Well, yeah, no,
hard for me to
Mando's still
compare the two.
very good. Again,
Yeah.
this is not to disparage these other shows
No,
again
of
at
course
all.
not. I get what you're saying though.
But you're naturally they're going to be compared. We're talking about Star Wars shows. They're naturally going to be compared, and from a pure if you're putting them up next to each other, Mando versus Andor. Andor is just, from a pure writing standpoint, is just miles ahead. Its characters are deeper and more intricate. The interactions are more thoughtful, and of course a lot of that is performances, but you'd have to have good scripts to get good performances, right? So because we talked about this all the time, but Hayden Christensen's performance in those movies wasn't in the original trilogy, or sorry, the prequel trilogy wasn't great, and he was certainly not helped at all by a brutal script. He was given, the line about the sand. That's like no one could make that sound good. I don't.
At least it's a meme now.
right. Well, at least, thank God it's a meme. At least
we can joke about it now. But
that's
just part of the thing where it's like there's certain people that should take help when writing like intimate,
like Tony Dilroy
scenes.
did with his brother.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And of course, George Lucas also didn't direct the Empire Strikes Back, famously, right?
Right.
And that is considered probably the best Star Wars movie that they've ever done. So, this is not to say that these people are bad at their job. I'm just saying that
of course not.
there are people who are very good at these things. In this case, Tony Dilroy and Dan Gilroy are very good writers, and it's just coming through in what I think is the most complex and thoughtful, and I'm not going to say necessarily interesting because it depends on what you find interesting.
Yeah, that's fair.
A lot of people love the Easter eggs and the kind of the characters from the Clone Wars popping up all over Mando and all that stuff, and that stuff is certainly fun. This is a very different tone, as we talked about, but what it does give you instead is instead of kind of reaching outward into the universe to grab characters this is reaching inwards into new characters to make you appreciate them more.
Yeah, of course.
And giving us new characters to make that galaxy feel bigger, which I think
Yeah.
it's
No,
desperately
I
needed
like
for a
that.
long time.
I very much like that they're not just throwing us
More of the same,
like,
right?
more of the same. Yeah, I like I said this in one of the other episodes. It was I really like seeing like fully new people, like a full new group of just brand new characters. I'm like, oh, awesome. Like it's not
Yeah,
just like, oh, here's some like kind of extras that might have a line or two, but it's mostly just about this guy that you already know about and you've already seen.
right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And like, so,
Because yeah, they very
well,
easily could have just made this all about Saw Gerrera and
oh, his
stuff like that.
partisans. Yeah. And
Yeah.
he gets a reference.
Yeah,
But
but it's not just
I think that's almost better. It's like we know what Saw Gerrera was doing, and we've
Yeah,
seen him.
exactly.
We had an episode on Rebels that led into Rogue One, and like,
Yes, exactly.
I don't know. Like, I'm not saying don't tell those stories. I think there's time
No,
and
of
place
course
for
not.
them, but like they don't have to be pulled into every story. So,
Yeah, exactly.
and for all we know, we might actually see Saw at some point in this series. So get Forrest Whitaker back in here. Get him doing that really weird way of speaking that
Yeah.
Saw Gerrera does. Okay, so let's get into this episode. I don't think it's going to take us very long to cover this. This might be the shortest amount of notes I've ever had at like only 4 pages.
Yeah, it's not not that it's
It
not too deep,
moves.
but I know what you mean. It's quick, yeah.
It moves quickly. It comes in at like 40 something minutes. I think what's the runtime here? It's like 42 minutes or something like that. It's not the shortest episode of the season so far, but it's like challenges for that. I think it's probably the second shortest.
Yeah.
And again, it's like from a pacing standpoint, I think it's really good. Like I think it fits together really well, but it's the most jumpy in terms of the fact that like it cuts back and forth
Yeah.
between these different groups very quickly. There's some very
Yeah.
cool cuts. There's some very cool kind of like the way that the themes weave through these different stories. I think is very
Right,
very
yeah.
cool. But it's just a bit more. I would say again when I talk about traditional, I mean more of like a traditional television storytelling, which is that it doesn't
Mhm.
feel behooved to feel like a movie where we spend all of our time with one person, or some like this. Even the way that Game of Thrones, eventually turned into, this
Right,
is
yeah.
all over. This is kind of where you would spend like, okay, one episode we're gonna hang out with these characters, and the next episode will be these characters, and vice versa, and then eventually they'll meet. This is everybody's on like as we get new characters and they're introduced, it's just more characters, not we're not going to
Yeah.
spend time
It's
with
like
these and then
all the
them.
little storylines kind of at the same time. But this one I did
Yeah.
feel like it was mostly like the main kind of storyline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And little
We didn't get a lot of
tidbits from kind of
ISB.
what's
Yeah.
going on. No, not really. And like even the others, like, the other stuff is very
Cyril.
minimal. Yeah,
Yeah.
Serial's very minimal and like um Mon
Mon
Mothma's
Mothma.
stuff,
Yeah.
that storyline's very minimal. Like it's just kind
And
of
Luthen
it's
barely even appears in this episode.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, all those storylines are very much happening kind of in the background right now. So
Yeah.
but yeah.
That'll all come to a head at some point sooner than later. I
Oh,
mean,
of course it
we're
will,
still
yeah.
following Cyril for a reason at this point. So let's
Yes.
start with him. So again,
Same thing. Yeah.
in the same vein as last week, we're gonna follow each kind of section
Yeah,
at
it's
a
a good
time
idea.
instead of jumping back and forth because they're just way too fast otherwise
Yeah.
and be confusing. So, okay, we'll start with Cyril because that's where the episode starts, and we get this shot of him staring out his window, and the Screen Crush recap said, oh well, he's staring at it's not technically a sunrise because he's on a lower level and it's like a reflection off of buildings. I don't think he actually lives on a lower level of Coruscant in the sense that, like, sure, he's not at like the top of like a shining tower somewhere, but
Right.
he's not in a lower level. I don't think he's in one of the sub levels of Coruscant.
No, I
right?
didn't think he was in one of the like subterranean levels because like I feel like you don't see the sun down there.
I don't.
But
Yeah, I don't. You don't. I don't think you do, and that's why. So it's like
yeah.
they might do. I don't know if you've seen Lord of the Rings stuff. I think you have. You said you've been watching it. Like
Yes,
in
yeah.
Casa Doom, they have these giant mirrors that reflect light around so that they can like,
Right.
grow stuff inside. That's cool.
Right.
I don't like. I presume there's some form of that somewhere going on in Coruscant on a planet that is an entire city. But
Yeah.
because like where else do they get their food?
Well, they
I
import
don't.
it all.
I guess that's tough.
It's like the main
But
hub. That's why they control all the trade routes. That's why the
that's right.
trade routes are so important
Listen,
all
let's
the
not get into the
time.
trade routes right now. There's plenty of time for trade route conversations, later.
Uh,
But what was I saying? Oh yeah. I don't know if I think that is the actual sun he's seeing and not a
that's
reflection
what
of
I
something.
assumed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's neither here nor there. He's staring out this window and he looks like he's either was crying or is about to cry. Now, I don't know how to parse it. Like I think the look on his face was brilliant acting. Just that look
Yeah.
alone
Oh yeah.
speaks volumes. But I don't know what's saying. Is he just miserable because he feels like he messed up? Is he miserable because because he's back living with his mom, and we'll find out very soon why that would be miserable. But
Yeah.
is he miserable? The impression I get, if you really want to be, it's like, what's he kind of staring off into space for? Is because he feels like he has no direction in life. He feels like he's a
Yeah.
failure,
I
right?
was just saying, like, he feel like, to me, I got conveyed from him very much that he just, like, he's defeated. Like, his posture's defeated later on, and, like, he's just, like, kind of wallowing in his own little pity party of, I got fired,
Right.
and what am I going to do with my life now? Right. So my life is over. I'm not a police cop or a space cop anymore.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I
So,
think I think you got to keep things in perspective, Cyril. Most of the time, the people who don't leave that job by choice end up walking away from it. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many commanders did Vader choke out before we got to
Yeah. They're just
like
going to end up
Ozzel
getting
or
shot.
whatever?
Yeah.
So he's actually, all things considered, he's actually probably one of the lucky ones. And his mom lives
Yeah.
on Coruscant, so she's got to have some money.
Probably. Yes. Yeah.
And because she's
Well,
not
yeah, we
completely
kind
in the
of,
subterranean levels.
yeah. I gathered that from like having family favors and that kind of stuff,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it seems like somebody in their family is up up there doing
Yeah.
something. I don't
The
know.
the the what Uncle Harlow.
Yes, yeah.
So we find out that he has a very overbearing mother, who we of course saw slap him last episode, but then she actually gets I think an actual line of dialogue this time. She's played by a lovely actress, Catherine Hunter, and yeah, she's just so good here.
Yeah,
Very
she is.
one of a kind
She's
voice. Yeah,
she's just so itty bitty. Like she's so tiny. Like
but
if you just
very
like look at them
scary.
sitting. Yeah, when you look at them sitting in like the booth when they kind of like do a side shot, it's like cuz he's like a whatever, probably a tall dude, but like an average
Right.
sized dude, but she just looks so teeny tiny compared to him. I'm like, "Oh, like but I get it though. You have that like I think that's part of the point of her character is like in stature she's so small, but she's got such of
Right.
like like an overbearing personality for such a tiny person.
Well, yeah, she has a presence about her that
Yes,
just
yeah. Yeah.
commands this kind of, not
Yeah.
necessarily like, it just, she's scary to me. I don't know
Oh,
how
yeah.
else to put it. Um, she has been in many, many, many things. I mean, she's most well known for playing Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Julie Taymor's A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay.
But she was also in an animated show that I loved, which was Tron Uprising, a very short-lived
Okay.
show. And she was just most recently, I recognized her from The Witch. She played the witches in The Tragedy of Macbeth. And just, again, obvious choice there.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, loved her casting decision here. This, again, another
Yeah, I
example of
liked
how this
her.
show, I think, is to some degree outpacing some of these other Star Wars shows by just its casting choices, even alone. I just think it's
Yeah,
very
like these supporting and
inspired.
like extra characters are still have a lot of like substance to them.
Oh
They're
yeah,
not
they're
just
way
like a hollow
right,
forgettable character, right?
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And like, like what did we know about Madame Garza or whatever from Book of Boba Fett? Nothing, and then she died, right? Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, so and she was played by that lady from Splashdance, and she's awesome. And then but she barely gets any screen time, and we
Do you
get
mean
no depth. And
Flashdance?
what did I say?
You said
Yeah.
splash dance.
Yeah,
I
is
was
that
like,
not what
the
it's
hell's
called?
splash dance?
I
No,
think
it's
is there not a
splash.
scene where she gets a bucket of water dropped on her? That's why I thought splash
Yeah,
dance.
no, but
Yeah.
she's a welder. It's flash dance.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I've never seen
Idiot.
that movie. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, that's hilarious. That's a very funny mistake. You're welcome to quote me on that. Okay, so she's talking to him over what seems like breakfast. She's like, fun Star Wars Easter egg. She gives him looks like cereal with blue milk,
Yeah.
and he's not impressed. She talks about how he's slouching. She has this kind of whole concept of this, like, well, kind of slouching or being a leader is not a state of mind. You have, or not something you do sometimes. It's a state of mind. You have to always be doing it. By the time you realize you're slouching, it's too late. And then it's people think you're a disappointment. I think what she said was, you might as well wear a sign around your chest that says, "I'm gonna be a disappointment," or "I'll disappoint
I'm a
you."
disappointment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesus.
Yeah, so harsh, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so here's the thing. Like, her performance is so good because despite, I think everyone knows somebody who kind of has an overbearing parent that can kind of be like that. I think she certainly embodies um my some of the people I know from my heritage, the Hungarian aunts
Right, yeah.
and stuff I know who are just very much have some of
Yeah.
the same mentality about them.
Yes.
And
The opinions and the nitpicking and the
right,
yeah, and you're just
but
like
it's always couched in
Yeah.
like it's like, oh, it's kind of always backhanded compliments constantly.
Yes,
You know?
yes, yeah.
And so I think it's just really nuanced and fun to watch because I think it's very relatable. And anyway, but hers are extra harsh. So yeah,
Yeah.
might as well wear a sign around that says you're a disappointment. And then she's talking about how it's like, oh, I wish I could have seen you while you were doing well. Like, at least I could have remembered that. Right? Again, another backhanded compliment.
Right.
And talks about how
Oh my god.
she never came to visit. And he's like, well, I had a spare room. You never came. And I loved this line. He's like, well, I don't remember exactly what it was, but
Open
like,
invitation is what she says.
yeah. Well, she says that
It's
any intelligent species knows that an open invitation is no invitation at all, right?
yeah.
Which
That's such a guilt tripping mom thing to
right.
do. Be like,
Well,
oh,
I
you
had an
didn't
invitation.
really
Right.
invite
You have to
me. Like, you
yes.
didn't specifically ask me to
Yes.
come.
Yes. In fact, it's funny because
Yeah.
I had a conversation with my grandmother today where she was mad about
Yeah.
my mom for doing almost that exact same thing. So
Yeah.
like, where she's like, it's like, well, I'm leaving on Sunday and we're having dinner on Friday, and she's like, well, she said maybe Saturday or Friday, and she hasn't specified to me, so she has to
Yes.
let me know.
Yes.
It's like, well, okay, all right, Grandma.
Yeah. Or it's like they hear about something like word of mouth, and it's like, well, I wasn't sent a specific invite,
Right.
so I guess
It's
I'm
like,
not
well, you know about
invited.
it now. Like, what's that? Anyway, so I just thought that was really like,
Oh,
how
that's
sharp
funny.
is that? So good,
It
right?
is. It's so on the nose about like those inner working like
And
family things.
if
Yeah.
I'm being honest, I kind of agree with her. I think an open invitation is kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
a half invitation. It's like, yeah, no, we want you there, but it's like, not now. That's kind of how it
it's
feels.
like the difference between the way you phrase something of like inviting someone of saying
Mhm.
like, oh, like you should come. I want you to come to this thing, and you can come if you want. Because
Right. Right.
telling someone you can come if you want is like, okay, but like, do you want me there?
Right.
Or like,
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
like, you're leaving it up
Subtle
to me
difference.
to decide when you should be the person to be inviting me. So,
Uh-huh. Right.
so
So we
yeah,
all,
she's not
like I said,
wrong.
relatable.
Yeah.
So she says she's gonna call in a favor with Uncle Harlow. And I love how she was like, no, he'll appreciate when and how I ask for the favor because I've been saving for this moment. I just like this kind of like long-term family planning in the sense that like, oh, I need to save these favors for the right opportunities. I don't know exactly when to do it.
Right.
And
Yes.
my
Yes.
brother will appreciate that I've been thinking about this in this thoughtful way. I just think it just speaks
Yeah.
volumes about how him and his entire family behave.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
of course, so
Family politics.
yeah, she kind of questions him on the fact that he has no future prospects, right? Like, what kind of job are you gonna get? And by the way, I recognize this whole line of questioning as well because my brother didn't have a job for a very long time, so there was a lot of like, are you looking for a job? Are you getting a job? What
Right.
What are you
Yeah.
doing? So like all that kind of stuff is because, and by the way, the subtext here is that I don't want you living here. you know,
Yeah,
go
it's
get a
like you
job so you
gotta,
can go live somewhere else.
yeah,
You know.
figure your
Yeah.
life out. Like, yeah, you
Yeah.
can land here for a little bit, but like you need to have a plan. You need to have something you're gonna do.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And so she calls in this favor, and we cut back to them, and she's like, "Oh well, I had the call. You know, he needs to think about it," which is the other thing where it's like he didn't even give a specific like answer, but he's like, "Let me think about it," right? And
Right.
what I loved
Yeah.
about this little exchange was that like she talks about how, you know, you need to study Uncle Harlow more, and you know, I had a hard time um describing the series of events that led us here, which leads me to think that like, and then the way Cyril reacts to that, which is basically like with extreme hostility to his mom the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Basically, but like I think deservedly so, which is like, oh, I forgot how annoying you are, basically, is what he said, and how kind of like in my face and in my business you are, and like there's a reason I left, and he's kind of remembering it
Yes.
now,
Yes. Yeah.
and like, and
I okay. That's again one of those things where it's like
yeah,
when you have friends who move back home for a little while, like if for whatever reason there's a breakup or something happens
right.
or like and they have to move back home for a bit and then they're just so bummed out about having to be back home because like I forgot how much I hated being here. Like I love you, but I don't want to live here.
I don't like it here, right? And he's like,
Yeah.
and it's more than that for him. I think it's he doesn't
Well,
like
of
his
course.
mom, which is another whole
Yeah.
thing,
Well,
right?
he had this whole different life, all this independence. He had this, job that he thought he was hot shit in and he was like
Right.
important in. And then now it's like bottom of the
Now it's
barrel,
proving
right?
his mom right that
Yeah.
he's not, you know, that he doesn't, that he's not good enough or
Yeah.
whatever. He's not his
Now he's
own
getting
man.
pushed around by his little old lady mom again. And he's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
great.
Well, he's being infantilized, right? Like
Yes.
he's being
Yeah.
treated like he's literally being given like cereal to eat. You know, of course it's Star Wars food, so it's like it's hard to know if that's like actually cereal or maybe like that's what people eat in Star Wars. I don't know, but that's the
Right.
impression I
Yeah.
think we're supposed to be given, right? And we do know it's blue milk, so it's like how any other things you eat with milk, you know?
Yeah. It's
Um,
definitely cereal.
yeah. I love how he picks it up and looks at it like, "Fuck, are you
Yeah.
serious?"
Well, they look like little,
Like
little
Cocoa
planets,
Puffs.
like little
Yeah.
Earths.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's true too.
Yeah.
Um, so I just like how that the implication of the conversation that his mom had with his uncle is that they basically spent the whole time talking shit about him and about how he can't
Yeah.
do anything right and they don't know what he should do, and you know and he's like, well, no wonder. He's like, I didn't get to hear his side of the conversation, but you certainly weren't doing me any favors. So yeah, like
Right.
yeah, I can totally understand. Like I like Cyril as a character in the sense that I think he's like interesting as a character and
Yeah.
fascinating to
Yeah.
examine. I think this is a really interesting kind of like angle that I don't think we'd get in most Star Wars stories. Like we're gonna follow
Right.
this
Yeah.
villain, and he's gonna go back home, and we're gonna follow him while he's at home getting chewed up by his mom. Like what a weird
Yeah.
thing to do, but
Yeah.
here we are, and I'm liking it. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, me too. It's definitely a different angle of like a
Hmm.
kind of a villain origin story
It's
a
a
little bit, you know?
Yeah, I mean it's a character study. I mean, he turns out to be like the big bad at the end of the series. It makes sense. I mean, everything about
Yeah.
how this all plays out. And the final shot, of course, by the way, is him staring at this hollow of
Yeah.
Andor.
Of Andor,
And
yeah.
implication is that Andor ruined his life, right?
Yes, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that if he can capture this guy or kill this guy, he can take back his life and take back charge of his life and become his own man again. So
Yeah,
I just think
exactly.
it's like we wouldn't normally the Imperial villains are just nameless, faceless. Sometimes they have names, but often they don't. Um, mustache twirling villains, right?
Yeah.
So I just think that and even a lot of the ones we meet in this show are in some ways still that, but we're just getting so much more context and nuance here, right? So anyway,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
liked it. Anything else you want to say about Cyril?
Uh, yeah, no, not really. It was yeah, we pretty much summed it up that it's just like, that typical story. Like he was a bully when he had this job and then he goes home and he gets bullied by his mom. So
Right, and the bullies,
it's
people who are bullied, often become the bullies. So
yeah,
that's just kind of the
exactly. So
cycle of life there.
yeah, but I'm interested to maybe learn a little bit more about his uncle and what his uncle does and what this
Hmm.
favor is going to be and kind of what that's going to do for him.
Yeah,
Because
I
even
wonder
they,
if
I
this.
know at some point they do say like, "Oh, your uncle said like you were never meant to be a police officer, and
Right.
that's not what you should have been doing." And then he's like, "Well, what does he think I should be doing then?" And she's like, "Oh, he's still thinking about it." So it's like
Yeah.
it's
Right.
yeah, and you're like, okay, so like, where are they gonna? If he
I
didn't
wonder.
think he
Yeah.
was fit for being like a whatever
like a cop.
like private
Yeah,
cop, why would
an,
he be like put into like
a soldier.
the
Yeah.
Imperial Academy, right? Like that doesn't seem
But maybe
that's very
he goes
similar.
against
So
his family's wishes and joins the Imperial Academy on his own,
yeah,
so
yeah,
for that
that's
same
true.
purpose.
But yeah, I guess yeah, I'm curious to see what how he turns out maybe in the next few episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it, it certainly seems to be not moving at a very fast pace, so we'll probably be
No.
dealing with this for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and by the way, like we also find out in the same episode when Andor is being questioned about his weapon that he stole from this guy, right? He's like, "What was his
Right.
name?" And I was like, "I didn't even get a name." So this is an
Right.
example of how the axe forgets, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is a theme that plays throughout the entire episode. From and you'll see one side or the other, or sometimes both at the same time. So in this
Right.
case, the axe could be the mom, right? Constantly chopping at her son, tearing him, like wearing him down, lowering his self esteem, all this stuff, and he didn't forget that, right? And he's unhappy to be
Right.
back, and his life is now ruined by Andor, his axe, right? Who ruined his life, and
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
at the same time, and by again continuing the mom theme, the axe is, the mom as the axe does not consider how her actions are affecting her son, right?
Oh no, of course not.
And Andor, who's ruined his quote unquote ruined his life, doesn't even know his name, doesn't even know him, doesn't remember him probably,
Yeah.
right? If he sees him again, he probably wouldn't recognize him, right?
Oh, probably not.
So
Yeah.
so there's that kind of that interesting. I think that's just an interesting dynamic. We'll touch on that as we go on here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at Andor and the adventures of him and the heist squad. Um, so we catch up with Andor as he wakes up and finds that Skeen has gone through his stuff. There's a lot of tension
Right.
with Skeen this episode. We find out that Skeen says anyway that Vel asked him to do it, but the impression is I think that he's lying about that. He's like, go
Oh
ask her.
yeah, probably.
She's sleeping,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't pick up that the first watch, but on my rewatch I definitely picked that up. And then he's washing his shirt or whatever he's doing, and doesn't have a shirt on. And there's a brief exchange about his tattoos. Skeen has a couple tattoos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I tried to look up, like, there's a couple references. So he's got one that's a barcode. I think it implies that
Yeah.
he was an Imperial prisoner at one point, right? And it's
Yeah. Because
go ahead.
yeah, the one on his chest is like crate head or
Yeah.
something.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I was trying to look up some of this stuff too, but I don't know how much stock I put in what I read. But you go ahead on what you kind
Well,
of
I don't know.
found.
You go first, and I'll.
To me, so like he has the one on his chest that he's like, Andor picks it up immediately on like, okay, that means crate head, and then the other one means by the hand.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure if these are like it's like triggering something in my brain of like I know there's like very specific like especially in like American military, there's very
Mm-hmm.
specific tattoos for certain designations. Like the Marines have specific tattoos and like the
Sure.
Navy have specific tattoos. So I'm curious if maybe it's something kind of Star Wars version of this, like a crate head is like a specific like branch of something. You know what
Well,
I
I feel
mean? Like
like
it's
it's
a
a
specific
specific
military
prison.
branch, but
I think that's
or
the
that,
impression I
yeah.
got. Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe a prison, and then yeah, the by the hand one. I was like, oh, I'm not too sure because it looks really like Mandalorian kind of to me, but
Yeah, I don't.
I don't
That
know.
one. That one's interesting, and it sounds very. Uh, it just sounds very cool. Like it sounds something that you would hear
Yeah,
in Game of
yeah,
Thrones, like a house words or
yes,
something.
yes,
Um,
yes, yeah.
but like,
But it's interesting that Andor knows what those are and can like
right.
read what they are. So I'm like, okay, because he spent time in those military academies as a kid, like from 16 to whatever. He was
Mm-hmm.
basically drafted into the military, and I'm assuming Skeen was too, because I think they kind of talked about that.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
yeah,
he says okay. So yeah, we learn that Cratehead, presumably a prison, hence with the barcode thing. We don't know what by the hand means, but it could also be a prison tattoo of some kind. Um,
yeah. They
Andor
also talk
reveals that,
about locking. They made a lot of cages or something. Is like
yeah,
what?
exactly.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
So
interesting.
context
But
clues there.
yeah,
It's there's no direct references there, but for all we know, we'll get some reveals of what that means, or a
yeah.
comic book will explore that. There's a lot of
Sounds very
possibilities.
cool.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of stuff where it was like, oh, that means because there's like a Thrawn thing where like the hand of Thrawn, but it's like I don't really think. this guy would have met Thrawn. I don't know.
Well,
And
yeah, maybe,
then
yeah, yeah.
someone else was like, "Oh, it's the Emperor's hand, like Mara Jade," and I was like, "That's a bit of a reach." Also,
I
I
feel like
think,
those are
but
both reaches. Yes, I
yeah,
100%
I was
agree
like,
that that's a
yeah, I'm
reach.
like, I think these are both very much reaches, and this is maybe something completely different. I
Yeah,
don't
and
think
the
this
only
guy
thing
has
that's
anything to do
obvious,
with the Emperor or
yeah, well,
Thrawn, because
he
those
does
guys
he
are
does
like very high up in
yeah,
the
and he says
military.
he's always hated the Empire, right? So it's like,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. So
that, or
it's
he's maybe
yeah,
he is the turncoat, right?
yeah,
The
well, yeah,
suspicion we had was that there's always at least one traitor. So
yes,
maybe he is a traitor. Maybe those tattoos mean something else than we're not familiar with. So the only thing
yeah,
that's obviously we know for sure is that crate, like a crate dragon, like from the Mandalorian that we
yeah.
saw.
They're
But like that doesn't necessarily mean that
from
the
Tatooine.
prison was on Tatooine or anything. It just like it's just like a cool
Yeah,
word, you know.
yeah.
So yeah,
They both sound real cool, though. I was like, man,
yeah.
they
By
put
the
some
hand,
good
crate
like,
head. Yeah, that.
yeah. I was
It's
like,
like you guys did
yeah,
some good Star Warsing, pulling Star Wars words out
uh,
of your hat to come up with that one. That's good. But anyway, the point of this whole conversation is that they are what Skeen is trying to do, and he's trying to do it the whole episode, is trying to understand Andor's motivations, understand where he comes
right.
from a uh, from a motivational standpoint. Again, not necessarily his origin story, but just try to get an understanding of why he's there, right? Because he doesn't trust him, and I think it's fair for Skeen to feel that way, to be honest. But I think he's going about it a
Well,
little bit
yeah,
extreme. Yeah.
yeah. Like his whole group has been together for like 5 months, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Andor's been there 2 days out of
Yeah.
nowhere. So
Right. And
yeah, I totally get the suspicion and animosity and that kind of thing.
yeah. And that's where we get the whole, talking about how he's like, oh, so what are you here just for? Revenge? He's like, that'll do for now, which I think is cool on its own.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then he talks about how the axe forgets and the true remembers, and which, if we're talking about just purely what the concept of this means, which is that, the an axe being a metaphorical representation of the Empire, being that it
Right.
will do all sorts of harm, but it doesn't care about those things. It doesn't remember the
No.
damage and the pain that it caused. But that pain on an individual level, the tree, right? The individual who's being affected by the axe can never
Right.
forget these things because it scars them. It's carved into them, right? I think
Of
it's a
course.
very powerful metaphor. It's very cool.
I think it is too. I very much like it. And it's so true because then it's like, and you just know that that fuels people so much more when it's like they
Mm-hmm.
know that they don't even remember
Right. They
hurting
don't
you. They don't
care.
even remember
Yeah.
the awful things. They don't care. They don't know who you
Just
are. They don't
business,
they've
right?
immediately like forgotten about the awful things that they've done to you because they've moved on and to the next.
On to the next
So
awful
it's
thing.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a very good metaphor. I like it very much.
Um. So I think that this is a cool, interesting exchange. We also find out that, and I don't think we found this out necessarily this episode, but Andor finds out that Vel and Cinta are an item. They sleep. They're like they're a couple of some kind. Um, not of some kind, a lesbian couple. Pretend.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
figured that as
yeah,
soon as
yeah.
he said something along the lines of like, "Oh, she's already sharing a blanket" or something
Right.
like that.
Yes. Right.
Yeah,
And they like and then they cut to the two of them, and they're like coming out of their tent together. So it's like, yeah, okay,
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah. Um.
cute.
Yeah. And I mean, it really at this line really only pays off for a line later in the episode where they're wondering about why, if Vel told Cinta um
Right. Yes.
about the
Yes.
whole being paid thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's why that's there, I think. Um and then the last line, because he's really not revealing anything at this point, which is that um he just wants to win and walk away. And then I love the line delivery here from Skeen about he's walking away from Eben Moss back rack. He walks away and just looks back and says, "Wouldn't that be nice?" And then just walks away.
Right.
I just think that just like
Yeah.
it's so wouldn't that be lovely? You know, just this
Mm-hmm.
concept of once you're in, there's no getting out. These people
No.
here are so ingrained in their hatred of the Empire, their own rebellion, which is a concept that we get introduced to a little bit later in the episode here. But
Well,
that
yeah.
there's no end to it. There's no end state. There's no
No.
just walking away. There's no victory really, for these people, not in the long term.
No.
And it's a
Especially
nice
like when
idea.
so many of them, yeah, especially when so many of them have lost something too. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like even if you win this one, you don't get to walk away because you don't get back the
Yeah,
things that
you don't
they've
you don't
taken
get
from
your
you
brother
either.
back, right? Which is what we learn
No,
about skiing
exactly.
later, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so next we catch up with Andor. He is sitting down for breakfast with Nemec. And this is kind of where we get learn a little bit more about Nemec. Andor is given some dray milk. The drays are those like sheep-like six-horned
I
creatures
love
that we
them.
see. They're very cute. It's
They
very
look like
cool.
little demon sheep. I like it. They're
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
funny.
yeah, they're cool. And so Nemec pulls out an old navigator unit. And turns out that's an old it's made from an old Polaroid camera.
Polaroid camera.
Yeah.
I clocked that the second I saw it. I was like, that's definitely an old Polaroid
Oh,
camera.
really? Yeah, nice. Okay.
Oh yeah. The second I saw that thing, I was like, and just the way they were like holding it too, like you never I felt like they were purposely like kind of always trying to half hide it so that you couldn't like directly tell that that's
I
what
don't
it
know. I think
was.
it's cool. It's like,
Yeah, no.
the Cantono or whatever, which is just like a ice cream maker. Like
Ice
that
cream
kind of
maker,
stuff is,
yeah.
yeah, like that stuff
Yeah.
is fun. I've no problem with that at all. That's
But
very
yeah,
Star
no, I was
Wars
like,
for me.
oh, I was like, that's definitely a Polaroid camera.
Yeah. So yeah, but they're talking about, it's essentially the idea of like having a GPS and someone coming over with a sextant and being like, this could never be hacked. They can't track you with this thing. It's like, yeah, but
Right.
I don't know how to navigate with the stars. He's like, yeah, but once you learn, then that's how they get you. Like that. It's like that's the this the what's the character's name from New Girl who always talks about how that's how they get you. Um,
Schmidt? Is it
no,
Schmidt?
not Schmidt. His buddy. What's his name?
No, I don't remember. I haven't watched
Yeah.
I've seen a bit of it, but yeah.
Anyway, there's a character on New Girl who's constantly like, that's how they get you. Like like it's like using credit card. Oh, that's how they get you. You know.
Oh, right, right. Yes, yes.
Yeah. And so that's basically what this character is, but much more nuanced. And so he's talking about how this pre-Empire navigator is, maybe it's harder to use, but it's completely yours and can be fixed. And there's kind of some like subtle references to the fact that you could never fix your iPhone, for instance. Like it's not, you couldn't open it up and fix it yourself, really.
Right. Yeah.
If it breaks and or your fridge or a lot of these things that like back in the day used to be made in a way that if it broke you could fix it, right? So I
Yes,
think there's a
yes,
little bit
yeah.
of that, but there's also kind of like a, hey, they this progress has made us soft, and it's made us easy to be stomped by their boot, basically. It's
Right,
just a cool
yes.
metaphor. So, but he talks about how he believes, and we actually heard Skeen talk about how he's a true believer. It's all about the cause, right? And he talks about how he sees oppression everywhere, right? And is writing a manifesto. So we know this type, right? The kind
Yes.
of the obsessive type who does clearly understand the battle that they are up against. This fight against fascism, though he doesn't say it as much that specifically, but he understands the intellectually what it takes, and intellectually he talks about all we need is a few more ideas to overthrow the empire, right?
Yes,
Good
yeah.
ideas, but maybe gets lost in the weeds a little bit, right? If you really do see oppression everywhere, everything is everything's a nail. If you're a hammer, all you see is a nail. That's the
Yes, yes, yeah.
analogy I'm looking for, right? So for him, he's obsessed with this, but maybe too a little too far. I don't know. What did you think of Nemec?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like how unique they all are, and but sometimes with him, he's a little squirrely, so I don't know. Like I don't, not that I don't fully trust him. I'm just like, yeah, he just seems
The type that's definitely gonna get killed.
either that or
Yeah,
like get scared or like he has all these ideas and great ideas, and it's just like, ugh, like I don't know. I get a bad feeling about him. So
I think he's just likely gonna die. I think he's
yeah.
like very innocent in that way, and it's
Yes.
unfortunate.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know about you. I don't know how long you're gonna last. We'll see.
I like the line he says about how the pace of oppression outstrips our ability to understand it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I think this amazing kind of thoughtful thing that they mention in the Screen Crush recaps that I always watch to try to catch the Easter eggs that I might not have seen myself, and I just find them entertaining. But they mention how it's a great analog to our modern life. My nose is so itchy. I don't know what is going on. Ugh. Sorry. I'm just like watching myself constantly having to scratch my nose on this live recording. Anyway, apologies there. But this concept that our lives are so complicated. There's a war. There's war in Ukraine. There's inflation. There's climate change. There's up in Canada. There's the residential schools. There's there's all these things all happening. It feels like happening all at the same time, and you just want to step back and escape it and just leave me alone, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of it kind of forces people into the shell where when there's so many things that you can't possibly wrap your head around all of it, or even
exactly.
try to grapple with it all. And I struggle with this on a regular basis. It's very easy to get lost in this kind of negativity of the world when there's so much pain and suffering and sadness in the world. And the way that they kind of stated here is that it's an intentional intentional byproduct of the way that the Empire acts. It's like, how can you be upset about one atrocity when there's 40 atrocities? How do you you even unpack that, right? And it's like every other week there's another one. It's like, how are you supposed to possibly stay? How are you supposed to maintain hope there? How can you even grapple with those things? So I think this is, again, just pointing to this show being the most thoughtful Star Wars show from a larger idea standpoint. It's very good. Yeah.
I feel like we even got that a little bit with the Republic though too, because like anytime like Anakin or Ahsoka was getting like overly, like not overly, but like upset about something going on, be like, why aren't we doing something for these people? Why aren't we doing something for this? Why are we
Lost
letting
in the
them be slavers?
bureaucracy, right?
Yeah, and then it was just like the Republic being like, oh well, we can't intervene in everything. We can't
Right.
help
Why is there so much
everyone,
slavery going on in the
right?
galaxy?
Yeah,
Right,
like I thought we
Republic,
like
what's
ended
going
that. And they're
on?
like, well, yeah, that's not really our territory, and it's politics, and it's always that kind of thing where it's like,
Right.
but the Empire is like the opposite, right? They're the one causing all
Right.
this awful
Yeah.
shit.
Right.
But yeah, it just like piles on people, and then people get disheartened, and they stop caring about stuff, which is
Right. But
you
he
get
does also
disillusioned and
make a great point, Nemec does, which is that fundamental rights are hard to strip. And that
yes.
and again, a great allusion, I think, intentional one, and maybe not, to Leia's line up to Tarkin about the harder you squeeze, the more star systems will slip through your fingers.
Yes, yeah.
And the harder they try to stomp the boot, the more oppression that they try to cause, the more rebellion they're going to create. It's a self-manifesting problem. So
yes,
for them anyway. Okay, so love that. I think it's a really great exchange. He gets a little caught up in his own weeds where he starts like comparing his manifesto to the navigational unit, and it's like, okay, dude, you're getting a little heavy for your own good here. You're getting a little lost. Anyway, so that's that. Then we have a planning session where Vel and Tamarin meet with Andor to figure out a way to get their escape ship into the sky, basically, out of the barracks and into the sky. Basically, they have the plan like 95% figured out, but there's this one piece that they don't quite know, and their plan up till 3 days before the mission, was to figure it out when they got there, which is wild. And Andor, I love his reaction. He's like, you guys don't know? This is your plan was to just figure it out? He's like, no. I'm definitely flying now. This is bullshit, right? And
which is totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, and she's like, no. It's like, mine ass is on the line. And by the way, this is a concept that I think is shared by, the others have said this in other ways. It's like, we need to know more about you because our ass is on the line and you're part of the team, right? And he's saying, if my ass is on the line, I'm going to fly this ship because you guys don't know what the fuck you're doing. And I think that's a completely fair statement to make. I just thought that was a really... ultimately, I don't know what this scene really adds, other than maybe doubt for Andor and maybe doubt for us that this plan, despite how regimented they are in their planning and their strategizing and how long they spent preparing, that they're not as equipped to handle what is about to happen as they maybe think.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of that and a bit of the fact of it's like, okay, well, they actually very much need him. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's there. I feel like a lot of them are kind of slowly realizing that him being
He's
here
actually
is
pretty
going
good.
to be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, even when they're doing like the little military drills
Oh
and stuff
yeah.
like that. And he's giving us insight about, like, okay, well, you two should switch because your weapons are different hands and like that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
he has these little insights that they
That
don't
moment's so
really
cool. I just thought that was
yeah.
such a badass moment where he's like, okay, well, because they're like all pissed, like, well, why don't you learn the mission before you start telling us how to do it? And he's like, well,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of give you guys a tip. And then I love how Vel's like, well, wait a minute, why would you do that? Which again, I get the impression that Vel is, and we already know this from last episode, that she's in over her head. She's out of her
very
depth,
much.
and she's seeing these moments from Andor where he clearly knows more about this stuff than she does, and she
Oh
wants
yeah.
to maintain a sense of leadership. But to do so, she has to walk a tightrope. And so in this case, she's like, well, no, let's hear him out, And
Yeah.
and it turns out he has I like the way that he has to back it up, by the way, with telling everyone what their hand is, like how handed
Yeah,
they
what their
are.
hand is.
Yeah, it's just like I love my favorite one, by the way, in that whole thing, which is that Nemec is
Nemec,
favored.
yeah.
Yeah, it just like favors his left but shoots right,
Yeah.
or the other way around.
Yeah,
I just think
favors
that,
right but shoots left. Yeah.
yeah, and I love the line
That's what I
reading
mean.
there. Yeah.
Squirrely.
So I just think that it's like, well, I golf right, but I play hockey left. It's like there's a lot of that kind of stuff in the
Yes,
world.
there is. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Adam's that actually. My partner, yeah, he's one of those weird opposites
yeah,
like that. So yeah, there are people
ambidextrous.
out there. Yeah, I guess so.
But I think you're
yeah.
only ambidextrous if you can write and like be fully capable.
No, because
in both
there's
hands.
ambidextrous like baseball players that like pitchers who can pitch with both hands.
Right. The old the change
They're
up,
very
the
rare,
switch. Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay. So we dealt with the Nemec stuff. We're doing the planning stuff. There's more practice. We talked about like they're walking like a soldier. By the way, we're not going to cut to it right now, but the way that they do it, where they're like, have you ever walked like a soldier before? He's like, I've seen it done. He's like, well, you're going to have to practice. And then we cut to the ISB agents and these guys walking like soldiers. And I thought that was a really
Yeah.
cool little thing. It helps frame for later, okay, they are actually achieving what they said they were going to do. Right. So I think that's cool. So, and we talked about the weapon thing. And then they get buzzed by a TIE fighter who's just, I guess, being a jerk. Just like an asshole pilot. Yeah.
Absolutely just being a dick. Like, yeah.
I love how he's like, it seems like he's like flying by and they're like, oh, he's gone. He's like, I don't think so. And then he kind of comes over the hill and then blasts by. It looks great, by the way. It looks super cool.
It does.
But
yeah.
I just think this idea that he's flying by, he's like, oh, wait, look, there's people over there. I'm going to go buzz them. And just goes and absolutely, like, that would be terrifying because like it also looks like they're coming in to shoot at them or whatever because they don't know that. Maybe they think maybe he spotted something and now he's going to take him out or whatever.
Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah. So they get spotted by the TIE fighter, but it's fine that he's just fucking around. And then another cool cut because when the typical cut after this is we cut to Lieutenant Gorn and we see that same TIE fighter flying over the watchtower. So I think that was a cool, interesting way to cut. Like, hey, this is all happening at the same time, and they do something interesting later with the ISBs, where they're kind of showing how the time is passing in a specific way. I think it's interesting, but with the kind of the hallway scene, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, yeah.
So Andor practices some Adani phrases. Meanwhile, Skeen, still fucking around, is still poking around his stuff. They get into another little spat there. And then as Andor gets dressed into kind of his soldier gear as they're preparing to leave, he tries to hide his kyber crystal around his neck instead of in his boot, which
seemed
like it was working pretty good. So
Yeah.
I don't know why he changed that up. But then that doesn't work out for him because later on he does figure that out. But in between that, they burn their stuff. So they burn their models and all that other stuff, and they share a drink to the rebellion, right? And they head off the next morning, the day before the actual heist begins.
Right.
Nice to see them sharing a drink, I guess, and I like the "to the rebellion" line, but nothing really. It's like these kind of quick cuts, and there's nothing really happens there other than just passage of time. And then on the way to the garrison, at the top of a mountain, or on the way up to the top of a mountain, we find out about Lieutenant Gorn's involvement, how he got involved in this, what's his rebellion, right?
Right.
And it turns out he fell in love with a local woman, and then lost a promotion because of it, and then
Right.
lost the woman, and then lost his taste in the Empire. Now, the implication there to me is this: he's stationed on the planet. He falls in love with one of the locals, right?
Right.
It's considered beneath you if you're in the Empire to,
for sure.
to
Yeah.
fraternize with the locals, right? Ugh, these backcountry people, these country bumpkins, ugh, right? And because of that, he's passed over for promotion, and that in and of itself enough to piss someone off, but maybe not enough to make you try to steal from your own employer. But then next, what happens? I think the Empire probably kills that woman in some way.
Probably, or probably
Yeah.
does something that she dies in, and absolutely,
Exactly.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
Not that she just left him, but that
No.
the Empire caused her to die in probably some way.
Yes.
And then we say he lost his taste for the Empire. That was the bridge too far for him, and that was it. And now he's the inside man, and boy, does he play that role really well. And we'll get to Lieutenant Gorn as the next segment here. But I just liked how the moral of the story for this scene is that everyone has their own rebellion, and then we're meant to question what Andor's is.
Yeah, exactly.
We kind of know a lot about the other characters, not necessarily what their pure motivations are, but we kind of understand who they are. And Andor is presenting someone who is an enigma. He doesn't have any of those things, and so, as his Clem, as the character of Clem, he's an enigma, and this is what confuses Skeen. He doesn't really trust him because he's putting on a facade, and he doesn't reveal some of these kind of human truths that are required to be a part of something like this.
Yes,
So I just find it interesting.
Like everybody else seems to have these very, specific stories, right?
Personal
but
stories.
They haven't got his out of him yet, so.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, he does have one, but he's playing a character, so he can't really reveal it at this time. Right?
Yeah.
So they get to the top of a mountain. They're taking a break, and Skeen threatens Andor. He pulls a knife on him and steals this kyber crystal. And I love Skeen here. He's like, I knew it. I knew he was lying. I freaking knew it. He just feels so self-satisfied here, and I think considering how we've seen him behave, it's like totally natural to believe that he would react that way.
Oh, absolutely.
And I also love how he kind of appraises it at 30,000 when Luthen said it was worth 20,000. I also think that's a fun distinction.
Yeah.
Because either he doesn't know or it's worth more than Luthen says. Either way, I think it's a fascinating. It's like you could easily just say it was worth 20,000 and no one questions it, but it just adds this little extra texture about who's telling the truth and why and all that kind of stuff. I love that. And so basically they get into a standoff. There's nothing settled here, because there's a ship passing by. We learned in a previous scene with Lieutenant Gorn that it might be I think an engineering officer from Coruscant, because they're coming in a Lambda shuttle.
Yes.
So that's probably what it is. Again, just for context clues, that's cool. But we kind of just see it in the background. And by the way, I love how Nemec is like, no, it's all good. It looks like it's going to somewhere else. No worries. And they're all just like standing there with like knives held on each other and like blasters pointed at each other. It's a cool kind of like Mexican standoff there. And again, just speaking to how this show is kind of that one next level up, because it's easy to just go do that and be like, okay, on to the next thing. But and we're going to leave this kind of unresolved. But instead, it kind of takes that next step and says, you get this shot of Andor kind of taking a deep breath and thinking, and then he decides to reveal what is essentially his motivation, and whether it's
Yeah.
he's revealing all of his truth here, he's not. Doesn't matter. He's revealing enough of it to gain the trust of the group, and to reframe him in their eyes as kind of a little bit more honestly, right? So he says that
Mm-hmm.
he is being paid, right? Which is a shock to all of them, right? He's like, I'm being paid to be here. But what I do like is that he kind of backs up the fact that he's being paid by being better than most of them at what they're doing, despite the lack of preparation, right? They're all very
Oh yeah.
serious, and but he keeps kind of pointing out their flaws in their plan, and it kind of justifies like, hey, I'm the professional,
Yeah.
and you guys have your reasons to be here, but for me, this is business, and
Yeah.
they all take it in, I think, different ways, and it's not revealed exactly how they all feel about it. But I just think it's a pretty shrewd move by Andor to do that. And it doesn't backfire on him as much as it backfires on what's her name, the leader, Lev. So
Yeah.
I just, and because we get that, like I said, that moment where her girlfriend's like, well, she didn't tell me either.
Yeah.
So
Looks at him.
yeah,
She's
yeah,
like, no, I didn't know either. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
But I guess the other kind of revelation here, and I really liked, which was that, like, hey, I understand you're all nervous. The day before is very nerve wracking. You're scared, right? But there's a difference between being scared and losing your nerve. And you're losing your nerve, and you're trying to blame it on me, right? If you don't want to
Yeah.
do it,
Yeah.
don't do it. But it's not my fault. I'm here to help make this go better. I'll walk away from this if you don't think it makes
Yeah.
sense. But I just thought, I loved that it kind of was this kind of like come to Jesus moment for a lot of the team. They're like, oh man, wait, yeah, these motivations do feel a little off, and maybe I am doing these for like investigating into him for the wrong reasons. So I just thought that was like a really emotionally intelligent move by Andor. Shrewd, smart guy. Anything else you want to say about this?
Yeah. No, I just like that he kind of comes at least a little bit clean about his motivations and why he's
Mm-hmm.
there. I think it helps this kind of like animosity. And I think it's a good thing to get that out of the way before they go into this whole endeavor. Right. So I'm glad they kind of tied that up a little bit and then,
Mm-hmm.
to at least kind of erase some of that conflict. So, because yeah, it would have
Yeah.
been annoying if they're just like fighting each other the whole, the whole time.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's the right move, not just
Yeah.
in universe, but also from a storytelling perspective. It helps
Yeah.
bond the team. I think it's good.
Yeah. And it's
Um,
nice that we get to actually like learn everybody's kind of motivations. At least not everybody's, but most of them. We get
yeah,
kind of
I
have a little
mean,
bit of backstory, which is cool. So
we learn more about two of them, right?
yeah.
We may or may not learn enough about the rest, but they all feel deep enough to not stand out as being more paper thin than another, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, okay. Last thing with Andor is they arrive at the garrison at dusk. They set up a fire to signal Gorn, which he receives. Skeen gives an apology to Andor. He basically tells him about his brother, and again, this is the kind of this direct analog to the axe and the tree, right? By the way, of course, also Gorn's story, very clear metaphor there as well, pretty clear. And then Skeen's thing is that not only was he imprisoned, but his brother, who was a farmer, just a peaceful person, was forced to kill himself. Basically, they came in
Yeah,
and
exactly.
annexed his home and his farm, and there's nothing he could do about it. And in a moment of despair, I think he said he filled his his pockets with rocks, and like walked into a lake, basically, which is like
Yeah. Yeah.
super dark,
Oh,
very
yeah.
depressing.
So sad, but it's yeah,
Yeah,
basically like the Empire caused that directly. So
yeah. And he's like, well, I hated them my entire life, but he's like, I can't. I think the way he says it, he's like, I can't even put into words the way I feel about it now. You know,
right. Yeah.
that it's just so painful, so hurtful that this could happen, and that they can just get away with it. And there's no repercussions. That he's just filled his life with rage and pain and anger. yeah, it's also again super relatable because my great grandparents who lived in Hungary when the Soviets took over following World War II they owned a soda water bottling factory,
Okay.
which was annexed by the Russians, by the
Yeah.
USSR, and that was just gone. You don't get nothing, you don't get anything for it. It's just
Right.
gone, and it's just you
Yeah.
just there's no recourse. Of course, they
No.
tried. They went to, they didn't get to escape, but my grandparents, did with my
Hmm.
mom. So I think there's just like some of these things, they are already using the Scottish Highland kind of analogy for the people of the planet. And just like there's a lot of this, again, this texture, these layers that are there that I think are fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's Andor. Anything else you want to say about him and his merry band of
No, I
pirates?
don't think so. Yeah, like I said, it's just it's nice getting a little bit more tidbits on their in their backstories. So,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they're starting to see him as more useful, and yeah,
Yeah,
trusting
and
him
it's
as part of
all
the
going to
team.
fall apart next week. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then we get Lieutenant Gorn, and we've been intercutting with Andor here, and I probably could have included this, but it just felt like it was so separate because he's not with them. It made more sense to
Right.
talk about him separately. And now knowing his backstory, it's got a little bit more weight to it and a little bit more depth to it, which is that Gorn. First we see him, he's pissed because the temple that they're going to use as their staging area for the break in is a mess. It's being used as target practice by the soldiers, and he wants it all cleaned up, in its ship shape. Basically, he's kind of like prepping the base for invasion, which I think
Right.
is pretty cool. But he
Yes.
does it in this like such a cool, like subtle way where he acts like an asshole Imperial, but in like the perfect amount of assholeness to achieve the
Yes.
ends
Yeah.
he wants without being suspicious. It's very good. Like it's super
Yeah.
clever. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. He just kind of puts it in a way of like, what? Like, get this junk out of here. What the hell? Like,
right. Yeah. I love it.
yeah.
I also like there's this idea of how there was people who were supposed to do it, but they were pulled away to help the commandant's wife move furniture. So again, this
Yeah.
this this idea of like opulence and like these people who are kind of above the law that they can recruit help from the military to help move stuff around their house is um, kind of an example of how this stuff kind of seeps into the empire and it gets worse over time. And we see it later with the ISB stuff as well, when that officer asked to be named a prefect, because we find out that a prefect was the one who stole the farm from Skeen's
Right.
brother. And it just like
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
little kind of subtle connections, and it just kind of to kind of say, hey, like these positions of power are constantly abused in these fascist systems, and
Exactly.
and just here's a kind of a victimless example with the whole furniture thing, but again, just a kind of another subtle example.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
Gorn then meets with Corporal Kenzie on the top of the dam. Great shot here, beautiful. I think they couldn't help themselves from having a shot on the top, looking out, and they kind of talk about the view being amazing, and I'm sure they all felt like that when they're standing on top of it. And again, I mentioned this is kind of the scene where we cut from that tie flying over, and there's this conversation about tearing things down to kind of build the airbase. It's like, oh, is it true that are the rumors true that this is all going to be destroyed at some point? And, it's like, well, it's been discussed, but who knows? I don't really follow what they're talking about here. Are they talking about the garrison being ripped apart and like the land being destroyed to put in an airbase, or what are they kind of talking about here? Did you pick
I
up what they're
kind
talking
of
about?
thought because he's kind of looking out, like obviously not at the water, but at the
Mm-hmm.
in front. I thought he meant like that scenery is getting destroyed and they're putting a base there, like an air
Oh
base.
yeah,
So they're
right.
like expanding what's already there. Is kind of what I
Right, or
got.
yeah, like the temple and maybe some of the
Yes,
view.
like
Yeah.
all that other like landscape and everything there. That's kind of what
Mm-hmm.
I gathered from that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Um, then there's this kind of gross talk about. He talks about how the Donnies, I guess, which is like a short for Aldani. And yes, sorry, we have some folks here on Twitch. Jelly Karma. Yes, full spoilers here for Andor. We're talking about episode 5.
Yeah.
currently, and we're about halfway through. So just to be warned.
Yes,
Um,
definite
but
spoilers.
but that is to say, you're always welcome. Please, we do this every Thursday evening. Love to have you here.
Yeah.
Let's talk Andor. So this gross casual talk, and again, this kind of subtleness of the show is where I think it does its best work, which is that I think we're all familiar with like casual racism,
Ugh,
right?
yeah.
And so this is an example of casual racism. They're talking about these Aldanis being stinky, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, oh, can you imagine what a couple thousands of them would be like? And the look and
Yeah.
the answer from Gorn, and I just, again, thoughtful and smart and well written, is just like, yeah, I can't imagine, because
Yeah.
it's he knew what that was like, and he liked these people, and he liked, I just think that's really
Well, yeah.
interesting.
And it's just such a, we always talk about the Empire being space Nazis. So
Yes.
again, it's just kind of that like they're just like so awful to groups that they see as others, right? So
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
no care for anybody else. It just makes it easier to hate them. So
Yeah, it's true, and it's like what I find interesting, and this is kind of a more of a meta thing, which is that of course, Clinton Gorn played by a black man. The Empire is not racist in our traditional sense, but they're racist against aliens, right? Which is this kind of this concept of anything that doesn't look like a human in the Star Wars world is lesser than in the
yeah.
Imperial eyes,
Or even
right?
within, if you're outside the Empire, like they don't see you, even other humans, they don't even see as human if you're like a farmer or
Right,
you're in
right.
an impoverished system. Like they don't care. Like that's the kind of thing that they're
Right.
like. It's
They're
like
they're
they're
also
still lesser.
classist. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's true. I
classist.
think
And
there's something to be said about
but yeah, you're correct.
the kind of the extra texture here, which is having a black man having to listen to this casual
Oh, of
racism about the
course.
locals, even despite
Well,
that
and have to
he's
participate.
not the
It's
one who's getting who's being on the receiving end of that, but
right.
it's just, I think, an extra layer that's interesting. But
That
anyway,
and the fact that it's like this is what this I think a lesser officer like thinks that
sure,
his superior wants to hear, right? Like these are the kind of things that they feel like they've taught that this is the way they're supposed to speak about
right.
other people to their superiors and kind of like this holier than thou, which is weird because he goes from talking about like how beautiful this place is and
To
like,
having
oh
to
yeah, I
listen
guess
to,
they're,
yeah,
yeah, and then
yeah.
to just be like gross like that. It's just kind of like, man, like, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's one bit of it. On the other hand, they might not be, racist amongst humans, but they are sexist, because we did hear about that in the last episode about how the
Yes.
ISB agent has like a tougher job because she's a woman. So,
Hmm.
anyway, take that for what you will. Okay, and then last little scene with Gorn is we have to see the interior of the base, which we'll see much more, I think, in depth next week. And we see the ship on the rail and all that kind of stuff. And we see that he's kind of given the gears to some of his men about how they didn't paint the gantry. And, despite having an engineering officer arriving in Coruscant all up in their business, right? And he threatens to pull them off of or put them on the task the next evening during the Eye of Aldani, which is this like
Right.
which you talked about obviously last week. This amazing visual spectacle, essentially, like, I think what they say, like hundreds of meteor showers all happening at once. And I can't wait to see how they visualize
Oh,
that, by
me
the way,
too.
next
Me
next
too.
week. But they're kind of like, oh no, we were supposed to, like, that's the only good reason to be here. You can't pull us off
Yeah.
to the thing. And then he's like, his little smirk. He's just like, okay, you're right. You know, I'd hate to, I don't want to be the bad guy. So you guys are fine.
Right.
Just make sure you paint it the next day, right? And then they're like, oh, okay, thank God, right? And so we find out that they're gonna have a skeleton crew on
Yes.
inside, which is another kind of great little piece of
And a
info there.
definite thing he's set up to. Like any other
Yes.
Imperial officer would be like, do you think I fucking care that you want to go outside and look at this thing? No, do your job. Like, but,
Yeah.
he
But no,
kind of
he
can
like he
play this like
manipulated it.
tougher,
Yeah.
nice guy. Yeah, he totally manipulated it to be like, okay, well, I'll do this favor for you
Right, to get
and
his outcome
make
that he
sure you're
wanted.
not in here.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
just like, and then I love
exactly.
how he just this little smile as he walks away. I just think it's like this very
Yeah.
fun little moment. So that's Gorn. Any other thoughts on Gorn?
No, not really. I just like I like his little puppeteering, the way
Sure.
he's playing his imperial role.
I
And
like his
yeah.
jacket. I think he's got a fun
Yeah.
long
His
coat. I think
jacket.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, then we go to the ISB, sticking with the Imperials. We get an earlier scene in the episode with Blevin, still the worst name.
Yeah.
Blevin supervising what it looks like Imperial cleanup of Ferrix, right? It's all sorts of activity going on. I think in the Screen Crush recap, they said that there was a what looked like to be like a dry cleaner, like a mobile dry cleaner there
That's
somewhere.
funny.
And he meets up with Blevin meets up with Captain Vanis Tigo. That's the name we get from IMDb. Who, by the way, is played by an actor here named Williff Scolding. So I'm just going to choose to believe that he was the actor himself was named after Williff Tarkin, and that was destined. He was
Oh.
destined to play a character in Star Wars at some point, particularly an Imperial. Because, by the way, I think Tarkin has there's definite Tarkin stuff in here. I don't think we'll see Tarkin on the show, though he's alive at this
probably
time.
not.
The way that Dedra's assistant dresses and does his hair feels very like, well, Tarkin's the most influential man in the Empire, so I should dress and act like him, and like would do my hair like him. Just feels like like that. I don't know if that's how it is, and like he's got those like gaunty cheeks in the same way. Like I just don't feel like it's an accident, So that's my at least weekly reference to Williff Tarkin. So anyway, that's Williff Scolding. He's playing this officer, and they're talking about how the hotel is being converted into an Imperial base, and he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. But he doesn't really care about that. He just wants to be named prefect, which is he admits is a title,
Right.
but that doesn't come with extra pay. And Blevin's answer was, I think you can wear a dress for all I care, as long as this is cleaned up by next week. So, yeah. So anyway, that's that piece. That's really the only Blevin stuff we get, other than this like brief conversation we have with that he has with his assistants as they're walking past Dedra in the hall.
Yeah, it's not much.
Which, by the way, I just like a little scene where we gonna get like one storyline passing off to another storyline in a way like that. I just think it's cool.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, what happened? What did I miss while I was away? I thought that was fun. So anyway, they pass in the hall, and then we have the scene with Dedra working with her assistant, and they're trying to dig deeper into the stolen box, even though she was asked not to. And yeah, classic move. And there's a couple kind of fun Easter egg mentions here. We get a mention of Hosnian Prime. And we get some mention of Kessel, Fondor, and Jakku, all, of course, of places we are very familiar with at this point. Hosnian Prime, maybe a little bit lesser known. It's the planet, I'll refresh your memory here. It's the planet that gets basically no screen time and gets exploded in episode 7 by Starkiller Base.
Yes.
Remember when they're all like, oh my god, they blew up the planets? That was Hosnian Prime, which was the capital of the New Republic at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, the New Republic took a philosophy where there was no permanent capital. They would move it around to different planets to kind of make the systems feel more part of the Republic. Didn't help, though. It still blew up. So unlucky for Hosnian Prime. And then we obviously mentioned Fondor. They probably have the largest or some of the largest shipbuilding facilities in Star Wars. Kessel, of course, which is where Han is from, which we see in Solo, and Jakku, which the desert planet that's essentially a stand-in for Tatooine. So
yes, where Rey's from.
Yeah, which is where Rey's from. Well, where she's left anyway. She's not from there
yeah.
so much, but yeah.
Yeah.
So despite having a little self-doubt, she's like, I don't know what I'm doing, which I thought was a fun kind of little line there. They agree that she is onto something, and they're going to keep looking to this. And then we get this really brilliant line, which is that I know this. If I was them, this is how I'd do it, which I think is a kind of like, oh, these people are very smart, and you should be wary of the ISB, which is something that, of course, we didn't get enough really of in any other medium. Like, we only ever barely touch on the ISB. This is the deepest we've ever dove into them in any kind of visual media anyway. Maybe more in the comics, but from at least TV and movies.
Yeah, I always like in Star Wars when we kind of have not the underestimated, but you have that imperial officer who is like kind of leagues smarter and leagues better than the rest of them. Like you get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that with Thrawn in Rebels because he's
Yes.
so much smarter than anybody else. Like he's so much more calculated and he can like figure out these attacks and these plans that these rebels are
Yeah.
making. So I kind of get that feel from her too, where she's putting a lot more work and a lot more effort into this because she has um, to be noticed and appreciated, I guess, in this
Mm-hmm.
job. But that also leads her to be like a stronger threat and a stronger uh, officer than some of these other guys
Yeah.
who just like walk around being like, "Oh yeah, that's not worth my time."
Right. No, I think you're right. I mean, there's the hubris of the Empire is also one of its downfalls, right?
Yes.
Um, there's another mention of how they talk about Hosnian Prime, and they're like, "Oh, you're not going to get anything out of there because the Navy won't admit that anything is wrong." And you get this impression that the ISB does not think highly of the Navy, right? And
Right.
of course, the Navy is who we see almost entirely through everything else. They're the ones who have the stormtrooper battalions. They're the ones who have the star destroyers. They're the ones who are staffing the Death Star. So we
Right.
see them fumbling and bumbling around, more than we ever see the ISB because they're kind of operating in the shadows. But you get this sense that the ISB,
Yeah.
though smaller, much more lean and nimble and effective, despite their lack
Yes.
of scale. And the Navy, they suck up so much budget and they suck up so much attention that they kind of have to put on a good face. And I think that there's like this
Oh,
interesting rub between the ISB and the Navy that is coming out there.
yeah. I think it's that too, but I think it's also has a little bit to do with the fact that when you run an entire regime out of fear, so like when
Sure.
you have Palpatine and you have Vader running around just killing people anytime they make a mistake, these guys are going to be way less likely to admit when mistakes happen and when like these small rebel insurgences happen and they do get away with something, they're not going to report it because they're like, well, I don't want to get choked for this. So they're like, we're just going to
Right.
brush it under the rug and pretend like nothing's wrong and
Yeah,
nothing's
because
really
like
happening.
I think they say the
Because,
Hosnian Prime has it. They haven't missed a piece or part in over 12 like months, basically. And it's
yeah.
like, is that even possible? Like that seems unlikely. It's like too perfect. And there's the other
Yeah,
thing that they
exactly.
mention here, which is like, you know, um, this line from her system. It's too random to be random, which I don't fully.
Hmm.
I don't fully. I think that's a stupid line. I think it's one of the dumb ones. I think out of the like the great writing of the show is it's like there's no set. Like, is that a real thing? That too random to be random? Is
Right.
that I don't know. I think of the show Numbers. Do you remember
Oh, yeah.
the show
I
Numbers?
think it's kind of along the lines of like eventually there is kind of a pattern and you can correlate those
Sure.
patterns. And it's like, yeah, if the same thing happens the same way in different places, then
Yeah, but I think
logically they're connected,
I
even
think
though
the
it's not
impression here is
happening
that
in the same spot.
yeah, but I think the impression is that they're not close, they're not similar enough to be a clear pattern. That it's
Right.
her
Yes. Yeah.
hunch, and they're looking for
Yes.
more, right? So I think that there's so I don't know. I just think that it's too random to be random is a silly thing to say. It's because it's
Yeah.
like that's just your hunch. You have nothing to back that up with. Um, okay, last two storylines: Mothma and Luthen. These will go quick here. So we catch up with Mon Mothma. It's their morning on Coruscant, and her husband doesn't remember their driver's name. Your driver's here or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, just really driving home that this guy's a real dingus. And then we find out that she has a daughter, which I don't think we ever
Hmm.
knew about before. This kind of interior life for Mon Mothma. She's always just been like a political figure, right?
Right.
She's a
Yeah.
senator, then she's the rebel leader, and then she's the new chancellor of the New Republic. But and certainly has a lot of gravitas and weight and all this kind of stuff, and she is a lot, but we never really knew about her personal life or her interior life, and now we're getting this fleshed out, and it gives so much more context to kind of what she has to sacrifice to be those things that create change. So anyway, she's meeting up with her family, and her daughter's giving her lip, and I just thought this scene was so good because it feels so, I don't know, necessarily real, but it fits the dynamic that has been established already about the way
Yeah.
that she interacts with her husband, the way that she's hiding things. So she is hiding things from her and her, her family, for their own safety. But by doing so, it
Oh yeah.
creates this gap, this distancing.
Like tension. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so
Yeah,
her
you
daughter's.
definitely get this like
So go ahead.
struggling. Sorry, I'm just saying you definitely get this like kind of struggling family tension of like, the teenage daughter being kind of like mad at her mom because she just says like everything you do is just for show, and then the dad just like not helping, just being a dick.
Oh yeah, he's just sitting there listening. I love her, by the way. Oh, are you
Yeah,
enjoying this? Are you entertained right
yeah.
now?
She's like, thanks for the support, thanks for the help.
And
Like,
he just has nothing to say as he sits there drinking his
no,
tea or whatever, or calf or whatever he's drinking. It's just like,
yeah,
what a yeah, you got to, he basically is taking the daughter's side here, which is that, oh, you
oh
really are
yeah,
just behaving on your own, but they can't. And like, again, this like passive aggressive, like, got to clear it with your mom first, like,
right,
come on.
yeah. Making her
So
be the bad guy.
right, and it's just like to say, it's like they had a plan. And so what's interesting here is that like her daughter is right to some degree. What they had planned was, I think, designed to use as cover for her to move money. That
Oh
was kind
right,
of I
yeah,
think a part of the whole thing. But and is she just a political stunt? No, I don't think so. But she almost certainly does use her daughter in that way, presumably as well. So she's not
right,
entirely wrong, but her motivations are sound. But she, the daughter is in some way justified, is what I'm saying. But the way that she goes about it, cruel. But like we talked about before,
yeah.
teenagers
That's like
are not smart, so
yeah.
you
Yeah.
you can't
And it's
trust
a
her with
very
this information.
typical it's a very typical family, like, it's just a typical dynamic when you're that age
Yeah,
to just, like, not get along with your parents and to
right.
just, like, yeah, it's very normal, I'd say, like, that's a very normal, like, tense family morning where you're just, like, not getting along with each other.
Well, I love the answer. Oh, is this how you want to start your day? And by the way,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
I didn't choose this conversation. It's like, well, yeah, you kind of did by choosing not to fulfill your promise to your mom. You said you were going to do
Yeah,
something, and now
yeah.
you're not. And now she's asking why, and you're like, well, it's all about these. Like, oh, I didn't choose this conversation. Okay, smart ass, go to your room. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Yeah, you did. So anyway,
Uh,
and her, like, the way she says, like, oh, that's just so hurtful, because she doesn't really know how else to describe it. It's like,
right,
you're
yeah.
kind of right, but like at the same time, it's like you don't have to be so sharp about it. Like there's a better way to do it. Anyway, I thought that was a great
Yeah.
scene. And then the next scene we get with Mothma is in her car with her husband, and she's talking about how at this gala or whatever they were at that evening, he found out from a colleague or a friend that she had started up a new foundation.
Yes, yeah.
And that she's like, well, were you going to tell me? And I just love that she's like, well, I
Oh,
didn't think you'd be interested. Why not? It's charitable.
yeah. I
And
love
this,
that dig.
yeah, that look that she gives her, that he gives her, is so funny. And then he's just like, what's
Oh,
his name again? And then asks
yeah.
her to basically ask the driver to like hurry home, I think, is the
Yeah.
implication there. I don't know. I
I
just
would
thought it's just
assume, yeah.
very passive
I
aggressive.
would
Yeah.
I just thought it was so funny. She's like, "Oh, I just didn't think you'd be interested, because it's charitable." Because it's like, "Oh yeah, you're such a dick, and you just
Yeah.
like rubbing
Right.
elbows with other rich people, and
Right.
you make me have these dinner parties with these assholes, and don't tell me about it. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or don't tell me who's
Exactly.
gonna be there. So yeah, like fuck you. Why am I gonna tell you about my charity when you like being friends with people who cause famine and
Right.
death?
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah,
and like, so this is all passive aggressive, but it's just dripping with subtext and dripping with drama and like tension. I mean, this
yeah.
marriage is doomed. I think is
Oh
the
yeah, you feel like there's like
yeah.
no love between them, and you
No.
like not an ounce. It just feels like they're there because for
It,
political reasons. They're
purple.
just
Yeah, and
married
it's
for
like,
whatever. Like
but like, I mean, that's not necessarily surprising because we see
no,
political, marriages of convenience all the time in the real
oh,
world. So
all
it's
the
like
time.
it
Yeah,
makes sense. Well, I mean, I don't know. We don't know the kind of inner stories, but you get the
no,
impression that some of these political marriages are purely for show, and that they,
yes, yes,
I think the Trump and Ivana was like, she clearly hated his guts, like.
oh yeah,
Like they're just so obvious, and it's like you can't divorce the sitting president, so but like That's an obvious example, but and this is not a direct parallel here, but clearly there's just this marriage is doomed. So, interesting keeping up with her here. Not too much going on, just political personal drama. And I thought well acted, brilliantly performed, good stuff. So, any final thoughts on the ISB or Mothma?
Yeah, I mean, the ISB stuff I found had its place. I didn't really feel like the Mon Mothma stuff like had a place in
Didn't
this
go anywhere.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for me to like this was kind of like a takeaway. Like I just feel like they could have thrown this in the last episode and it would have worked
Sure.
fine there.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I just felt like it was a little bit out of place is all I'd say. Like I liked the second interaction they had in the car because like when she
Right.
sassed him, but yeah, I just felt like it was a weird spot to
It
kind
would
of
fit
have
better
this,
together if these were one larger episode or one mini movie.
yeah,
These 3 episodes, I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
because the timing is, that the evening before they have
Yeah,
the dinner.
these are like each days
Yeah,
later. Yeah, I
and then
kind
the
of get
next
that we're
day.
seeing these storylines day by day, so
Yeah.
it makes sense. But I'm like, I didn't really need to see that. I don't know.
Right. And then last but not least, we have Luthen. He's nervous. He's listening to, and he's like fiddling with an old radio communicator thing, and he's looking for news on the heist that they're gonna pull the next day. And he's talking to his assistant, and she's like, "Listen, you're not gonna get anything out of this tonight. You're just working yourself up. If you want to be useful,
Right.
polish some coins or whatever,
Yeah.
and just relax." Because it's out of your hands now. Basically, what happens is going to happen, and however it's going to play out is going to play out.
Yeah.
And I think she says either it works or it doesn't. He's like, well, that's a comforting thought. and
Yeah.
and it's like, well, it's very pragmatic, but it's not helpful when someone's nervous.
Right.
And he talks about how only Vel can trace the back to them, but so can Andor, right? And of course, we
Yes,
don't know
yeah.
anything about Luthen, so you get the impression that maybe it does get traced back to him via Andor. But
Yeah.
you don't know.
Yeah. He
No.
definitely seems like a little nervous, right? Like because
Mhm.
he says at some point like that he kind of rushed it or he
Yeah,
jumped
he
the
wanted
gun,
it to happen too bad. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now he's worried that maybe he made a mistake by bringing Andor into this, and
Right. Well, in practice, practically he is right. I mean, he brought them in super late, right? Into this whole thing. Ultimately, he might be the one that helps make it work. So
yeah,
maybe it was the right call. And so I like when he asked his assistant if she's checked her walkaway bags, right? So she's got 2, one in the store and one on the ship, right? Basically, these are
Right.
like go bags that
Yeah,
they have to leave their
getaway.
life at the last moment. You're at the
Yeah.
drop of a hat. You're ready and prepared to do that. I don't personally have a go bag. I know some people like to carry one, like just like in real life. I always thought it's like, really, like, what are you gonna? Yeah, maybe listen. It's one of those like doomsday preppers. It's like if you're proven
Okay.
right, boy, will you be the best one here. But like, it just seems like such an unlikely occasion. When would I ever
The-
need it?
I was gonna say
You
the
know?
only people that I know that have ever had a go bag are people in their like 9th month of pregnancy. Because you have your like hospital bag packed up because
Right.
you're like, oh yeah,
Right.
pandemonium. Like
That's
that
a
has all
very
your
different
things,
type
your-
of go bag. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's like that's the only time I've ever heard of a go bag. But like if you have like a doomsday, like
It's often referenced in
what's-
like spy movies and stuff like that.
Oh,
Like a
yeah.
frog bag, sometimes it's
but
called
like
that.
real life,
Yeah.
like what do you put in there? I'm so
Yeah, I don't know.
confused.
I
Like,
have
canned goods.
it's a
Like,
dude thing. No, it's like you've got like
it's
a
dude
knife and
thing.
like some clothes and like and like a couple supplies and yeah. It's
Men.
like I said, I don't have one. I know people who do. I question them on the necessity of it at the time, but
That's
yeah.
very funny.
It is funny.
See, to
and
me,
then
I'd be like, oh, what, you put like medicine and bandages and like, is
Yeah,
it, like, a
probably.
first aid kit.
those things
But,
are probably in
yeah,
there too.
First
right?
aid kit makes
Yeah.
sense, but
Yeah.
okay.
Anyway, so that's that, and then the final line here. This time tomorrow, it'll all be over, or it'll just be getting started, which I think is a fun kind of way to end the episode.
Yeah.
It implies,
Yeah.
obviously, it directly implies the heist itself, but larger about the rebellion and kind of the greater plan here.
Yes.
I think it's a fun
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's Luthen. The other thing is, it looked like he had like a Jedi and Sith holocron in the background on a shelf.
Hey?
But
Yeah.
first of all, they looked way too big. Like I
Okay,
feel
so
like
that's a thing. They get
yeah.
smaller. It's a thing. They are bigger to start because I thought that too. And then my
Wait,
partner
like
was like, "Oh yeah, no, but that's a thing." And like you see it a few other times is when they actually open them, they get a lot smaller and they like
they like
fold down
shrink
and
into
stuff.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Well, and here's the thing. Why would he have like those are extremely valuable things? Do you
yeah.
get
That's
the impression that
insane to
those
just
are
have those
they're
sitting
yeah,
on
just
your
sitting on a
shelves.
so either that or they're like replicas or something, which I
Yeah,
think
they
is
could
maybe
be
yeah,
a
yeah.
replica or like a an art
Yeah,
rendition of them
right.
of
Yeah.
because like people probably maybe knew those existed, but yeah, you would think that like Sidious would be like, I'm taking those. You
Well,
can't have
exactly. I mean, first
those.
of all, I don't think
Like,
like it's
keep them
clear in the back
small.
room. I don't think they display those out in
Yeah,
the
it's true.
anywhere. But
It's
like,
true.
if they are real, it's quite the valuable possession he has there, and he should
Yeah.
take. They should be in his go bag or whatever. So,
Yeah.
um, and I would, and it's like, ooh, what do they say? It's the other thing. If they are real, like,
Yeah,
what are
which
they?
ones are they?
What's
They're
on
probably
them?
just
Yeah,
boring. Like,
right. Yeah, this is stance one of lightsaber training
yeah,
or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. The other one talking about the Jedi, the Sith one, just like, here's how we choose our Sith names.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
they all have to start with Darth, but then after that, it's really up to you. We encourage something spooky,
Yeah.
Tyrannus. That's a good one,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, Sidious.
Oh,
Ooh,
God.
spooky.
Yeah.
um,
So ridiculous.
Darth Vader, rise, Lord Vader. Anyway, that's my impression of the Emperor. What do you think? Pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's great.
Do you think we'll get some? Hey, speaking of the Emperor, we saw Ian McDermott back briefly in Vader, right? Do you think
Yeah.
we'll get a little cameo from him at any point in this, even as like a halt, like a public message
Maybe
to the Empire or something
I
like that, or whatever?
I would say maybe like a holocron of like is that what I meant?
No,
Holocron. Yeah,
hollow. Yeah,
holocron.
like a
A
what?
hollow of like him
Yeah,
like being pissed or being like do something about these rebels or
right.
blah blah
Something
blah
like that.
maybe.
Yeah, to the ISB
But
potentially. Yeah.
yes, yeah, something
But
like that
but I feel like
maybe. But
maybe like I feel like that's to get all the way up to the Emperor. Something would have to be very pretty
huge.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I don't
I
think
yeah,
he would like talk to them. I think it would be like lower levels, like you know what I mean?
or even
Goes down the
Tarkin or
chain
something
of
like
command.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he would be like it would be more like in the background and like a public message to like to the
Yes.
Empire as a whole, like to the citizens or something. I don't know. I want more
Yes.
Ian McDermott as the Emperor, and it's like we're gonna tell stories in this time when he's alive and actively
Yeah.
emperoring. Then we should get more of that. It's just not fair if we don't get more. Is really my feeling on that.
Agreed.
Anyway, okay, that's it. That's the episode. I enjoyed it despite it being, I think, a little slower than normal, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
saying a lot for a show that's already pretty slow. A lot of setup, not very much payoff. But I like the nuances here. Love the title. Love the whole metaphor, the axe forgets metaphor. So yeah, I guess next week will be super exciting. We'll see a heist.
Yeah.
Who dies? Who betrays who? How does Andor get out of there?
Yeah.
Do they get the money? There's all these questions. I'll find out that next week. But I will be in Japan next week, so the schedule
Right.
might be different. We'll try to
Okay.
figure it out as best we can.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Anywho, until then, may the force be with you, and we'll talk to you very soon.